everybody, to the Board of Supervisors meeting for September 4th, 2007. Would you all please stand and join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have a few announcements. There was no action taken on the following two closed sessions held last Tuesday, August 28, 2007. The first was a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9b1, anticipated litigation, and the other, a closed session, public employment, county administrative officer, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. There will be an addendum to today's agenda, which will be a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employment, County Administrative Officer, and Public Works Director. Move along to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the board at any one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Any board members? Any member of the staff wish to remove an item? Any member of the public wish to remove an item? Very well. Entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Move for approval on the consent item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries on 5-0. Moving along now to the public comment. Any member of the... Oops. Time, yeah. Time. Sorry, 5-minute recess. Now we'll move along to item number 7, public comment, where any member of the public may address the board on an issue not on today's agenda.
Good morning, Michael Walker, Undersheriff. Last week, as some may be aware, San Andres experienced 3 power outages due to transformer issues. In the last power outage on Friday, which San Andres was significantly without power for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. The Sheriff's Office has an emergency generator that's supposed to kick on and provide power to the Sheriff's Office so we can continue emergency services. The generator malfunctioned, a relay in the generator malfunctioned, creating a power surge within the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office was without power. We immediately transferred all 911 calls and radio dispatching to CDF in a system that we established in the last year and a half. That worked fine. The calls went answered at CDF, but due to the power surge that the Sheriff's Office occurred, we received significant damage to our electronical equipment within the jail and dispatch and business office. Preliminary estimates put the loss in the thousands of dollars. We have repair people that are coming out today. They've been out over the weekend. Emergency services are up and running within the Sheriff's Office. The jail is operating, but we lost all of our computers in the jail except for one. We transferred that computer to the booking station. We've lost 9 workstation computers in the jail and Sheriff's Office. We've lost 2 workstation computers that handle the CLETS entries and data that goes back and forth from dispatch to the state. At this point, both of our live scan machines are down, which prevents us from doing any fingerprinting electronically in the jail. We have a repair person coming out today. Some of the board will remember that we replaced those live scan machines 2 years ago. It cost us $84,000 to replace those machines. Hopefully they can be repaired. In addition to that, we lost all intercom systems in the jail, which allow us to communicate back to the cells and listen to what's going on. So our workforce is now having to get out into those areas more to make sure they know what's going on. We've lost the entire fire alarm system in the jail. At this point, we may be going out and buying fire detectors and sticking them up on walls back there so that we have some kind of alarm system to let us know if there is a fire. We have numerous rooms that are without power. We have doors that are without power. Just to let the board know, we'll be coming to you with hopefully a detailed, complete list tomorrow during budget hearings so that we can anticipate what that
That's
cost
all
is
our
going to be.
contingencies you've just used.
Well,
That's what
a couple questions. Number one, does PG&E hold any responsibility, and do we have recourse against PG&E?
It appears at this time that it was the generator failure and not PG&E. PG&E's power went out, but in the normal course of business, the generator would come on. The generator malfunctioned with the relay, and we had low and high power surges caused by the generator itself, which caused the damage.
Okay. Then secondly, Tom, do we have insurance for an event such as this so that we have some limited liability
Insurance, we have a $100,000 deductible
for this instance?
for this instance. So
Now,
the
that
first-
would include everything over there, or are they going to take every piece of equipment and say that's a new instance?
No,
I mean,
whatever the total replacement cost is, we'll pay the first $100,000.
okay, and then thereafter, we have insurance to cover the balance.
That's correct.
Okay, so the maximum hit to the county as far as general fund or total dollars would be $100,000.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
So
Are
Mike,
we going to have a list tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay,
Does that
why
mean
don't you provide that to us? We'll be here in final budget deliberations, so maybe you can get that over to us.
It's supposed to be completed first thing in the morning,
Okay.
but the start of the budget hearings.
Do we have a handle on what in that generator caused this, and is that part of the repairs we plan to make?
The repairs were made to the generator Friday afternoon by Holt Brothers. They did put the generator under a load test, and it is fixed at this point. It's a temporary fix. They're bringing extra parts out to complete the fix, but it is, at this point, repaired and
Can't we
functioning.
put some surge protection on that generator, so if you get a surge, the generator just, stops and it doesn't come through to all our equipment?
There is such a system that's in place, and we aren't sure if that's malfunctioned at this point, and that's being checked also by Buildings and Grounds.
How often do we check this generator? I mean, if we have a backup system like this, do we not sort of run it through its paces every,
Every
quarter?
Every Monday morning.
Every Monday morning you do it?
Yes.
And it always has worked, and then all of a sudden it didn't work?
Yes. And we aren't sure if it was because of the series of power issues that happened, that something malfunctioned in the generator, since we had the 3 transformers that blew in San Andres, 2 on Thursday and 1 on Friday, if that didn't do something to the generator.
Well,
But
if it did, then we'd have some recourse against PG&E, it seems. I mean, if PG&E's failures caused the failure of the generator and not maintenance or whatever, then it seems to me we do have some recourse. So I think that needs to be pursued, and somebody needs to make a determination. Was it a generator failure, or was it something that the generator wasn't ever intended to handle that came out of the PG&E system, and therefore it's the PG&E system that's at fault?
I believe Buildings and Grounds and Mike Miller from the administrative office are working on that issue right now. But the piece of equipment that went out in the generator itself is as old as the generator itself.
how old is that, Mike?
I think it's probably about 40 years old.
Is that a diesel generator?
Diesel generator. The generator itself was just serviced in July by Holt Brothers. But this piece of equipment, this relay, is in not the motor part of the generator, but in the electrical part of the generator that blew.
Okay.
What's the rating of that generator?
I'm not sure.
Thank you for that uplifting report. I don't know if I want to get up after that.
My name is Richard DeRivi from the Jenny Lynn area, and I just want to talk a little bit about the developer for the Tarantis Golf Course. We all know the history of he's going to build 3 golf for himself, and then he got to expand. He was having so much fun and went into 18, and now he's gone in and had his golf course published in National Northern California Golf Digest in May of this year, saying the golf course is going to be open for the public in July, which he had no permits for yet. And then we go on, and he's selling $50,000 memberships, and then for half a pint of oil, you can play for $85. And let me understand, I'm for the golf course. I just don't like the way he's manipulated the county supervisors and the agencies that work for us into going on this, give me an inch, I'll take a mile, where he keeps on pushing his outer limits. And I guess it hit the mark last week when I was invited to play in a tournament this week. Now, how can somebody who has no approved golf course have a tournament for 140 people at the golf course? Somewhere the supervisors have missed this guy who keeps pushing the envelope. And as long as he pushes the envelope, everybody seems to let him get away with it. When I built my house on a property that's 100 years in the family, I had to abide by all the rules and regulations and get my permits before I started to build my house, even though we own the property for 100 years. Now this guy walks in, and he's doing everything, and he doesn't have the permits. So isn't there a way the supervisors can direct the permitting agencies to shut him down? If this was in San Joaquin County or Sacramento County, they'd shut him down already, because he doesn't have the permits. That's my question. How come he's continually moving a step and nobody's taking any action to force him to complete the process before?
Mr. DeRivi, at this point, it's just for public comment, not necessarily discussion. However, I'd like you to make sure that you leave your contact information with the clerk.
Yeah.
And I would like to talk to you.
Can I play? Are any of you invited to play? This group that's playing is a Stockton-based group. And it's kind of interesting because it kind of blew my mind when I was invited to talk to them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Billy Western, HRC Food Bank Program Director.
And Kathy Hall from CalWorks.
And we just kind of want to let you know that September is the 30th birthday for the food stamp program since the federal food stamp program was founded in 1977. At that time, both the Republican administration and the new Democratic administration offered Congress proposed legislation to reform the food stamp program. The Republican bill stressed targeting benefits to the neediest, simplifying administration, and tightening controls on the program. The Democratic bill focused on increasing access to those most in need and simplifying and streamlining a complicated and cumbersome process that delayed benefit delivery as well as reducing error and curbing abuse. And to me, when I read that, I look at everybody needs to know, is working together to feed the hungry of our county, of all the nation, actually. It's a federal program. And since 1977, 26 million people have it's helped 26 million people put food on their tables. And just as a little bit of information for you here in Calaveras County, an average of $169,000 every month comes into this county for food stamp dollars. I have some other things for you on the benefits of the food program. And I'll give those to you. It really helps families stretch their food dollars. It fights obesity through education. It puts food on the table for children. It keeps elderly family members independent. And it helps them transition to self-sufficiency. It helps support local food retailers. And like I just said, it generates economic activity. And it helps people to attain self-sufficiency.
I just want to say, as part of Calaveras Works and Human Services Agency, we do have 854 families and individuals on food stamps. We're always trying to reach out to the community. And this month in September, we're opening a new outstation in Angels Camp. And so we're, again, trying to reach as many people as we can in our community.
And the food bank partners with CalWorks, and we do food stamp outreach in our food bank office, at our mobile pantries, and at WIC offices and sites in Calaveras County. And we are doing a survey this month with all clients. How has the food stamp program benefited you, and what changes would you like to see in the food stamp? And we're also doing that as agencies, submitting that to the state and then to the federals. That brings federal dollars to the state and federal dollars into the county. To me, it's a win-win.
Certainly is.
Some of our wishes for the food stamp program is that the allotment is raised and that we get rid of the fingerprinting imaging that's necessary, and that we get rid of the able-bodied adult roles. Those are some of our wishes.
The greatest thing is to work in partnership with a wonderful agency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your enthusiastic hard work. The answer is no.
Good morning, Howard Stolman, your CIO. I just wanted to follow up on the comments of Under Sheriff Mike Walker and let you know that our data center seemed to, at this point, have survived the power outage. But for the first time in my recollection, the power surge that followed or preceded the power outage actually kicked all of the breakers on our PBX. So in addition to the IP phones that are in our data center go out because we turned the server off, the PBX also went down for the first time that I can remember. We actually had to work with Volcano to bring that system back up. But for whatever reason, the Sheriff's Department seemed to suffer the brunt of the surge, and they did lose a lot of equipment, which also begs another question that we need to follow up with Buildings and Grounds and Mike Miller on, is a lot of that equipment is, individual equipment is also protected by surge protectors, and that equipment seemed to fail as well. So we need to do a little more investigation to determine why that happened. But whatever it was, the voltage or the spike that preceded the outage was pretty severe. So working with PG&E to remedy that is something that I would definitely like to pursue.
So, Howard, are you saying that there is or is not additional equipment damage over and above what the Sheriff's Department?
To my knowledge, right now, all of our equipment came through, so we're going to continue to do an assessment in our data center and the rest of the campus and outlying buildings as well. But we know the Sheriff's Department took a big hit. It was almost like lightning struck that building. It was pretty amazing.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Alice Rain. And I'm here about, in fact, I have some information to pass out. I'm here because of the up-and-coming, this is a copy of minutes that we've been going through with our meetings with the public as well as the representatives from Public Works. This has to do with some of the road work that has been done and not done in Rancho. And I'm going to read here what I wrote because sometimes for me to remember everything. You probably won't read that today, but you can read it later. We're asking for a study session because we've got some very serious problems that we'd like to get ironed out so we keep peace in the family. The County Service Area 1, Rancho Calaveras, hereby requests a study session with the Board of Supervisors, Public Works, and members of the public, since it is public money being used for road maintenance in Rancho Calaveras through the assessment. This is regarding the FY 2007-2008 annual report on the CSA 1 Rancho Calaveras. As we're having problems now, we've got road work that we have requested that has not been done, and these are very crucial roads. but they're not getting done. We have the money. We have over $800,000. And we've been asking for fog lines on all of Rancho. We made an agreement last year. Because of the bid price, it was too high, and so Public Works said they would take over and do part of the work. And so we agreed to, anyhow, $44,000 up to $50,000 to spend to fog line all of the roads in Rancho and if Calaveras County itself wanted to piggyback, it would probably make it cheaper. Well, we got a bill for about $25,000, and a good portion of the roads were not done. It may have been on one side or another. Anyhow, we have problems with that. We'd like to get it straightened out. And the cul-de-sacs, the head of the cul-de-sac, there's no white line or no fog line. And this is very, very dangerous down there because we have some drop-offs that are 30 feet, 50 feet to 150 feet. You just go over. There's no place to catch yourself. And the fog, people don't know that. They can't see it because the fog line stops and they can see that there's still a road ahead, and they go. And this is really, really bad. We have no fog lines on some of the roads itself that are a straight drop-off. The side right next to the side of the hill has the fog lines, but the side that is going over, no fog lines. And this is not right. And we want to, as I said, get together for a study session. We have charges that we cannot account for any work being done on our roads, whether it's in brushing or road work itself. And we've had road work done that we didn't request because the county decided they wanted to do those roads instead of our roads as they're going along. Anyhow, we've got trouble, and I brought you a copy of the minutes so that you could see. Now, Elaine Elves' name appears here. She, at that time, was the chairperson for the Homeowners Association. And we've had Homeowners Association now coming in. We've had the public coming in to our meetings, listening. And one of the questions that they ask is, where are the bills? We have not seen, we have 2 bills in all the years, 2 bills. One was from Reed when Crail was not done. That was one of our roads. Crail was not done. And Stabulus had a major eruption coming up. It was like a volcano. And those 2 were not done by Public Works. They were sent out to Reed after they said they were going to do all the work for us. So that was $33,000. We did actually get a copy of that bill. And then weed spraying was done about 2 years ago, and we got a copy for the county. And that was up to us to pay. Well, that was not correct. We finally got it corrected. But we have asked and asked and asked for a copy of the bills so we can see what we're paying. And I can't seem to get it through Public Works' head that when you have a bill, PG&E comes in or telephone comes in or road work comes in, you see the bill, you know who you're paying it to. And there's no record that we have. So people come in and say, well, how come this was $500 and that was $2,000? We have no answer. And we have asked and asked and asked. And I've done this for several years and gotten no cooperation, not just recently only, but absolutely. And they send us over to the auditor controller who says, go back to Public Works because they have the bills and they sent us the amount. What we get is that computerized sheet with a lot of numbers on it with no explanation. And how do you, if you sent me a bill and said, okay, you pay this because of these computer numbers on there, I would not pay it. I would demand, what am I paying for? And this is what we are getting. We are not getting any breakdown of any kind. And one of the big things I think that is very, very important, because I don't think that they realize the number of hours we spend riding those roads. It's 48 miles. And we ride those between the 5 of us 4, 5, 6 times a year. We send in a list of roads, what needs to be done and what we want done. And then they'll call and they'll say, we want a list of priority roads. Okay, we give them a list of priority roads. Then they'll call and say, well, now we need an updated list of priority roads. So we keep saying, when are you going to do the work? When are you going to send it to bid? We got a notice the first of the year that they wanted what they wanted, and we got it to them as it was asked for. and they said it was going out to bid. Then I got a phone call just recently, it's not going to bid. County has decided to do the work themselves. In other words, we want a study session so we can get this thing ironed out, because Public Works works hard, and we work hard, and you people work hard. And I don't like to see contention in there. I just want to have it so that we're working together as one and not fighting each other. And you are basically our boss.
Dr. Rob.
And I think that if you know these things and we can have a study session, bring all this out, iron it out, and then you can help us decide what you want. And I will now finish my little spiel. But I really think this is important because of the road conditions that we have and the dangers to the people's lives.
Hey, Alice, I think that Supervisor Thomas will get together with you and Public Works and see if they can resolve some of these. If not, we'll bring it to a study session and work towards the resolution for you.
Will we have a study session with all of you?
Well, you
Russ
may.
has been
You
down
may.
there. Yeah.
Yes, you may. But you're going to work with your supervisor.
Right. And then we can have a study session with you people, too. Because we've got a lot of members of the public that would like a study session. They're very upset. And even though Russ is our supervisor, we want to get these things out. Public Works has problems with us, I know, and we have problems with them. We need to get this thing ironed out.
If you work with your supervisor to make those arrangements.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
Okay. We'll try.
Thank you,
Oh,
Alice.
Russ.
Here we go again.
Thank you.
My name is Lynn Eppeler. I'm a board member of CSA1 Road Committee for Rancho Calaveras. And I just received this over the weekend, which is the Board of Supervisors resolution establishing parcel charges, in CSA1. And at first glance, it really threw me because it says, the public hearing was held on Tuesday, September 11th at 9:30 by the Board of Supervisors and considered all objections and protests to the report, whereas the Board of Supervisors approved the report as filed. Well, that's a week from now. And then on the last page, it says, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, September 7th, which is not a correct date. September 7th is Friday. And it said, regarding the proposed benefit assessments for the purpose of road maintenance on non-county maintained roads in County Service Area 1. And said hearing will be held in the supervisors' chambers. And then down at the bottom it says, written comments must be submitted to the clerk of the board by 4 p.m. Friday, September 7th. So that's the public input. So obviously those are mistakes in the dates. But my other main question is, what's being proposed are these amounts of money for lots. And they're different amounts for if it fronts on a county or a state-maintained road, it's one price. If it's fronting on a CSA road and county or state-maintained, or if it's fronting on a CSA road. Now, as a citizen and a homeowner in Rancho, I am assessed on my tax bill CSA 1 road fees. Now, why are these additional assessments? I don't know why. Are we being assessed twice? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm not, but our Public Works Director, I'm sure, is. Rob, perhaps you could
I need to sign
make
this.
some clarification.
Okay, on my tax bill, I pay an assessment fee. And then, what are those fees?
Good morning.
for?
Rob Houghton, Public Works. If I understand the question correctly, what we're essentially doing next week is what we've been doing for the last 30 years or so, in CSA number 1. They have an annual benefit assessment for the purposes of road maintenance, and the board essentially renews that benefit assessment on an annual basis. So the action that we're requesting for next week is essentially a review and renewal of that assessment for road maintenance purposes. No changes in the parcel charges are proposed at this time.
Well, who pays these fees and to whom? Who pays
These
parcel?
fees are, as you suggested, show up on your tax bill, and you pay that. That money goes to the auditor, and then it's transferred to an operating trust for CSA number 1 that Public Works administers.
So Rob, this is going to be on next week's,
On the 11th, correct.
on the agenda. So we'll have a public hearing then and have plenty of time for discussion at that time.
But I think one of the key questions was, are they getting double billed? And the answer is no, this is simply a renewal of the existing situation.
That's correct.
So are these fees taken out of, I don't remember what my tax bill said. Let's say I pay $48 a year on my tax bill. Are these fees taken out of that amount and put in another pile?
I believe, as I understand it, the tax bill reflects just that amount, and that entire amount goes to the CSA number 1 operating trust.
Oh, so my fee would be one of these?
Correct.
Not in addition.
Not in addition.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Marita and gentlemen. I'm Rosemary, and I'm here with the Historical Society, and today in particular, the Red Barn. On Friday, the 31st, we hand-delivered a request to be on your agenda today, and I realized that with the holiday, that was too short a notice. So I decided to come and address you with my concern today. And my concern is a windmill tower that's down at the solid waste yard at Milton. And it belongs to the county. It was on some property that the county acquired. Now, what I'm going to say to you is not a complaint. I just want to set a little background of how I happened to be before you. Over a year ago, Public Works told us that we could have this windmill tower. It's still standing, and it did not have a windmill on it. So we didn't take it because we didn't have a windmill. Well, that situation's changed. One of our members gave us a wonderful aero motor windmill. It's in good repair, and now we want to set it up over at the barn. So about a month ago, we made a request to Public Works to release the windmill to us, but we haven't had any action. It's just, in fact, we don't even get phone calls. And we didn't get the paper signed. And then it got related, well, it was Tom's fault. Well, Tom was on vacation. Tom had a day off, and so no one's accepting what we should do next. I don't want to go into all the details of what happened, but unless you're particularly interested. So the final decision came from Public Works and from Tom that we had to come to you. So here I am. Now, why is the rush after all this time? We have an expert in doing windmills, and we have volunteer help. And now we have everything but the tower. So that's my request. The tower belongs to the county. It would only get moved to another county property. We have the ability to pick it up from Milton and move it up here on a trailer and set it off. Maybe not set it off. We may need a forklift or some help from Public Works here to get it off of the trailer. We feel that putting this windmill up would be an attraction to the museum, and it would also be an attraction to the whole government center complex. So, if you can't act on this today, would you please put us on the consent agenda for next week? Do you have any questions?
I would just ask a question to administration. How can we expedite this and make it happen?
Actually, it's already been the process. We've been working with David Studley, their representative. It's just a paperwork procedural thing. It is a county asset where we requested a letter from the Historical Society requesting it, and then in turn the county will declare it surplus to county needs and then give it to the Historical Society. There are issues of insurance liability when you're erecting a tower and things we're concerned about. So it's just a matter of paperwork. We just have to be careful that we follow the same rules for all community groups, and that's what we now do based on some of the incidents that happened last year in Public Works. We now request from all agencies that they give us a letter requesting what they'd like. We declare it surplus to county needs and then make the transfer. So everything is in place to make that happen. It doesn't require any action at this point.
So when can we expect this to happen?
As soon as I see the letter from the Historical Society, we could do the transfer.
Rosemary, my question is, can you or somebody there just write a short letter today?
Actually, that letter was sent to me I got it on Friday.
Oh, okay.
It's probably in transit from my office to Mr. Mitchell's office.
So that issue is taken care of? The letter?
The letter is,
the request.
is in my office or Mr. Mitchell's office, but we do have the letter. It was hand-delivered to us on Friday.
Right. There will not, it's not required to have a board action on this next week or any other time?
Now, at some point, we'll bring it to your board like we do all of those items in a package. That these are items that have been declared surplus to county needs. They are county assets, and we do have a fiduciary responsibility to account for where they go to.
So the question remains, when can they actually acquire this?
They can acquire it, once I see the letter, they can acquire it today. It's just, but they'll need to work with
How's that?
With Rob Houghton to make sure that we have equipment to lift it onto the truck and so forth.
So the Historical Society should coordinate with Public Works?
With Public Works to pick it up and deliver it.
And who in Public Works do we contact?
Rob, who would you like them to work with?
Pardon?
Call Rob Houghton.
Okay.
And we'll make that happen.
And I didn't quite understand everything you said. Your voice wasn't coming through clear. So, Bill, if you would please review exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Well, apparently the Historical Society has provided the letter that's required to release this property, and it will be delivered to the county administrative officer today. And as soon as that happens, he will notify Public Works that they can release the tower that you want. And you coordinate with Rob Houghton. You can probably pick that up today.
You mean I can pick up the tower?
Yes, but after you coordinate with Mr. Houghton. Well, you
Hooray.
are good. You are good.
Thank you.
Okay.
And as far as the reference to last year, the first we dealt with this issue, our office in County Council, was last week with their representative. So this is the problem we get into many times, where employees of the county try to make arrangements of their own and don't go through and take the necessary steps. So there are official agents of the county, and then there are unofficial agents, which are all 515 of our employees who seem to feel that they can give things away. So we're just trying to make sure that all the proper rules and procedures are followed.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your attention to detail.
Good morning. Brian Moss, Administrator of Environmental Management. As the board is aware, on-site sewage was transferred to Environmental Management on July 2nd. they've been incorporated into the agency and are doing quite well. I'm happy to report. I just wanted to state to the board that an email was sent out to what we considered interested parties on Friday, and it also included the Board of Supervisors. It is our first on-site sewage department news bulletin, and this is something that there's also a hard copy put in your file. This is something that's being done to keep the community aware of what's happening with the on-site sewage department, including the AB 885 regulations and timelines for actual adoption of regulations, the latest that we hear from the state of California. We also stated in this news bulletin, we talked about the transfer a little bit, where people can now get their permits for on-site sewage repairs and or new installations. We talked a little bit about how the board adopted a change to or addendum to Title 1312 a couple of weeks ago. And essentially, again, directing everybody to the new location for permits. We will release additional bulletins in the future as necessary, especially as we see changes to AB 885, since it is a moving target. So I just wanted to bring that before the board. You do have copies of the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any other member of the public or staff who would like to make comments for items not on today's agenda? Very well. We'll move along to item number 8, discussion and possible action regarding Board of Supervisors' response to the 0607 final grand jury report. This is for the County Council.
The board's, the board's responses are due today. I sent out a draft of some suggested responses about a week ago. I haven't had any feedback, so I assume that these are basically...
Is this the same as I read last night that you had sent out?
It is, yes.
Okay.
I gave you a second copy today just for convenience,
Oh,
but
okay.
they're the same. I assume that there's no obvious errors. I would ask that the board confirm the first paragraph on page 3. That refers to the board's direction with regard to the general plan update process. I wasn't at that study session. This paragraph states what I understood the board's direction to have been, but I wanted to, since it's an important issue, I wanted to make sure that the board, or that these responses correctly state what the board directed. And otherwise... I
think that's where the board left the last study session.
I believe that's correct.
In many cases, the individual departments have responded to issues raised by the grand jury, and these draft responses just adopt those responses by the individual department heads.
Any comments from the board or questions or corrections?
Jim, I'd like to propose one on page 3. Recommendations for findings 1 through 3, page 39, the last paragraph.
Yes.
The decision regarding a new jail is primarily in the hands of county residents and the state, AB 900. I sort of didn't want to leave the impression that it's just county residents who are going to fund it, that it's got to be a partnership with the county and the state. That that's just my...
I think that's correct.
Is that appropriate for this?
Yeah.
It is.
I support that.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Is
there a motion to accept?
If that sentence, just so I'm clear, if that sentence states something to the effect that it depends on county residents and state funding?
Yes.
And I put AB, and I put in parentheses AB 900.
I'll second Marita's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding consideration of Calaveras County as a cooperating agency on the New Melones Lake Resource Management Plan Environmental Impact Statement.
Good morning, Shirley Ryan with the County Administrative Office. On August 14th, the board had brought forth a letter from the Bureau of Reclamation regarding an invitation to the county to become a cooperating agent for the New Melones Land Resource Management Plan Environmental Impact Statement. And it was the concern of the board at the time regarding what they meant by financial support and some other clarifications regarding what is required of a cooperating agency. At the board's direction, I contacted the Bureau of Reclamation, both Elizabeth Vasquez from Sacramento and Peggy Brooks from New Melones Center. And basically what financial support means is that time spent by county staff reviewing and commenting on the RMP EIS would be borne by the county, that there would be no reimbursement by the Bureau of Reclamation. Additionally, should the county require an additional study, whether it was roads or something that was outside what the Bureau of Reclamation required, then that cost also would be borne by the county. But basically, it's working in partnership, reviewing draft documents, coordinating comments from the different departments within the county, and giving those comments back to the Bureau. Additionally, there's a workshop going to be held on the 28th and 29th of September for comments from the public. And if the board decides to move forward as a cooperating agency, they will need to submit a letter to the Bureau stating that by September 14th, signed by the board chair. And they will also need to designate a county contact, a representative that will be the point of contact for the county. That person will receive all the documents and will distribute them to the different departments for review and comments, compile those comments to make sure that they are consistent, and then return those to the Bureau. That representative also will meet and work with the Bureau. In fact, they spoke about getting a meeting with that designated representative in the beginning to mid-October. So if the board decides that they want to be a cooperating agency, we can go ahead and put forth that letter to the Bureau, but we will also need to know who you would like to designate as the point of contact, the representative for the county.
A couple of questions, Shirley. On this, if the county requests a study, the county pays for it.
That's correct.
Well, it seems to me that kind of depends on the study we're requesting. If it falls within something they should be doing anyway,
well, they have certain studies that they are planning on doing. If it's something outside the studies they're doing, I'm sure they'll be doing impacts to roads, they'll be doing impacts to recreation. But if it's something specific that the county wants that is not part of the plan, then the county would be obligated to pay for it.
Is that spelled out pretty clearly I mean, are we going to spell that out in the letter we send to them?
We can.
Okay, because I don't want to think that we're going to start assuming the costs of studies that appropriately should be done by the Bureau.
Right.
The only thing I can think of, and Russ can jump in here, is we are looking at that road coming off of O'Byrne's Ferry. Now, I can see that maybe they say, well, that shouldn't be included in the study, but if we want the road to be included, then it seems to me they should bear the cost for when they initiate the study, that they incorporate what the effects of that road would be, and we're not going to have to redo the whole Bureau EIS process because we would like to have a road coming in from O'Byrne's Ferry. We may need to bear the cost of that road and get their concurrence on the engineering and location of the road, et cetera, but I don't want to have to redo the whole EIS study for New Melones because of that road. So I think there needs to be a pretty clear understanding of what we might be responsible for and what they might be responsible for. And I'll let Russ jump in.
Well, I can only assume that because of the responses that many of us filed during that period in which you could file your requests for inclusion of different proposals, that the road and the possibility of that road, I mean, I'm a pretty religious guy, but I'm hoping that this is true, that this is being moved along. Now, this study that they're talking about later in October, that will give us an opportunity to see if it is on their radar. But I read the 1976 report that said that they were anticipating, in exchange for all of the takings, they flooded a lot of people's property, and that they were going to have 3 million visitors to that facility by this time in year 2000, actually, is when they anticipated they have 3 million. They've never exceeded 800,000. So it may be a leap, but I would think that they would have certain responsibilities to the people that they promised those levels of use back in '76, that they've got to do something to ratchet up their efforts, and hopefully the road will be the thing or one of the things that they would agree that.
Well, that's hopeful, but I can almost assure you that's not how they're going to look at it. But this is the time to get in, and I just think we need to be certain. I'm all for the letter. I think that's absolutely necessary. But I want to make certain in the letter that we say, I mean, maybe we should say what Russ is saying, that you agreed, to 3 million people. The way to increase use is to incorporate this road within your studies and within the EIS process, et cetera. I think we're going to have to fight for that, for the ability to put that road in and to have another facility down there. But what we don't want to do is at some point we do that. Now we have to pay for the whole, redoing of the new Maloney's management plan and a new EIS and a new everything, and then that just kills the project. That has to get incorporated now in their processes. And so I think we need to be very careful in the wording of the letter we send back to them.
And that's fine. And it's not my understanding that we would have to pay for the whole redoing of or reorganization of the RMP. It would be only if worst case scenario, it would only be in regards to maybe the impacts of that one road.
Well, maybe you could write the letter such that it is our assumption that, and then work with Russell, that from 1976, et cetera, that we've talked about this road and that you are bringing the road forward. We are not bringing the road forward, but we consider the road critical to the development of New Maloney's Lake, and we wish to be a part of the process and the EIS, et cetera, that includes of this road. And then they'll probably write back and say, no, you're going to have to pay for the road. And then we may have an argument. What I don't want an argument is that we have that when the road is built, that we have to redo the whole New Maloney's management plan and pay for a new EIS, and go through that whole process. So we want to make sure we're pretty clear going in on what our assumptions are. And then my second question is, I would like to have the contact person be in the administrative office. And so I would look to you or Tom to make a recommendation as to who you think that individual should be.
Stephanie?
Stephanie Moreno, Director of Community Development. I'm a little confused, and I'm sure the Bureau is a little confused at this point. I'd been handed this letter a couple weeks ago and asked to write a draft. Was unaware that the County Administrative Office was also working on it. I've been playing telephone tag with the Bureau, so I'm sure they're confused. We've been designated as the lead agency when we initially wrote comments on this process. It's a planning process, and would coordinate with our general plan update efforts and assume that we would be continuing as the lead agency on this process. I would recommend that at least, the very least, there be some coordination between the admin and the community development agency on this, but that really we have the expertise within our office to participate in the EIS with the minimal amount of cost and effort. We're well aware of what the proposal is by Supervisor Thomas, have had conversations with the Bureau previously. Last year had some meetings with them relative to the opening of a new launch facility down there, and would recommend that you continue with our agency in moving forward on these comments. Obviously, we would need to coordinate with whatever conversations that the CIO's office has had, but we were unaware that we were no longer the lead agency, so that's where I'm at.
Stephanie, if I could ask you a couple of questions here. They're asking for a person to be designated as the contact person in their correspondence with us. Do you see either yourself or Lynn O'Connor being?
I would recommend that it be Lynn O'Connor, our general plan coordinator, that would be the lead on this, because it will tie into our general plan update, both on the recreational level, on the circulation level, on the land use level of what happens down there in the New Maloney's area.
Yeah, that was my thinking too. That and I don't want to overburden Lynn on her work on the general plan, but this is really it's hand in glove with the general plan, isn't it?
And I apologize, I didn't know this was on the agenda till Saturday. I saw it on the agenda, or I would have coordinated with the CIO before today's session.
Okay. Shirley, Tom was suggesting far more specificity than I would have imagined on this response. I mean, the letter is just saying, do you want to play in this game? We don't have to tell them. I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, their letter said we'll pay for any studies we request, and so
The letter
I think we need to be real
didn't
clear on the rules going in, or otherwise they're going to come back and say, well, if you want that road included, why, that requires a review by the needs to be included in the EIS, and we haven't done that, so you need to pay for that, and you need to pay for this, and you need to pay for that. So I think we need to be pretty clear going in what we're looking for out of the process.
Basically, what the Bureau asked was just simply a letter stating that the county agrees to be a cooperating agency, bear the financial support as outlined in their letter. The letter itself does not specifically state what that financial support is. It was only upon the conversation I had with the Bureau.
But I think it said studies. So, I mean, once you just say, yes, we agree to what you said, then it's up to them to interpretate what studies we should be paying for, and I'm afraid of where that will go.
We can word the letter however the board desires. It was strictly at the board's request that I made contact with the Bureau to determine a little more clarification. And as far as the designated person, that is obvious, or department, that's obviously at the board's discretion. It was just to relay the information that I received from
the board requested it during the meeting.
Well, let me go why I think it should be in the administrative office, because we're doing a general plan update. The moratorium is set to expire in December. We're still way behind on processing the workload. I don't see any reason to start burdening the planning department with more projects, and we don't know how much time this is going to take. I don't see this as being something that working with the Bureau for the New Maloney's management plan is something that is really critical to any function that's ongoing in the planning department at this point. And I think we would be wise not to just keep dumping things on the planning department when they don't have the ability to completely process or adequately process what the responsibilities currently are. So I would like to see it stay in the administrative office.
Well, I respectfully disagree. This is eventually going to wind up in the planning department anyway. It has to go there. It's going to be included in the general plan. If we are going to build a roadway and affect the recreational traffic, it's going to have a regional impact, and I just think that the planning department is going to be involved anyway, no matter what we do. So at the very least, a coordination between the planning department and the admin office would be admirable. It looks to me like the possibility exists that the Bureau of Reclamation has the same fear that we do. They don't want to do our work. We don't want to do their work. So I agree with Supervisor Tryon that the letter just needs to make sure that there's that separate. We have this understanding. I don't think the Bureau of Reclamation wants to do the work for Calaveras County, and of course Calaveras County doesn't want to do their work. So that line of delineation has to be as well as possible defined in the letter. But at this point, they're just asking if we want to be a cooperating agency. I assume that they have this same request or offer to Tuolumne County, and I'm sure that it's something they normally do within their realm of authority. But I do think that this belongs in the planning department, because I can't see it not winding up there anyway.
If Tom, Tom was suggesting that it was going to represent a distraction that would prevent them from processing normal applications and stuff, I could weigh in with him. But with this going to Lynn directly, and that this is, I'm reading you as saying this is part of her responsibility, so it's not going to distract from the other functions. So I'd be very much in support of what you're saying, Bill.
I just wanted to answer one more thing for Supervisor Tryon relative to the studies. I imagine that what's happened is we were pretty strong in responding to them, that they had not allowed us to make comments at the public hearing. You and I were both there, as was Supervisor Thomas. I think that what they're telling us is that if we want to pursue that option, we're going to have to probably pay for some additional studies to pursue our option. They're not asking to pick up other things that they would normally carry, but that was a pretty aggressive thing that we had asked for, and if there's additional costs, they're probably unwilling to pick it up and will want to pass that cost on to us. I think that's what they're basically referring. It's telling us, put your money where your mouth is.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would ask that it be broken into two questions. Number one, to send the letter, which I think there's probably unanimity on, and secondly, if you'd poll the board on which department should be the contact department working with the Bureau.
Oh, very well. And
I'm for the administrative office.
Steve?
Community development.
Rita?
Community development.
Russ?
Community development.
There you have it, community development. But you will coordinate with the admin office.
Well, I have to say on the letter, I'm in agreement with Supervisor Tryon. You only have one time to negotiate and to set your course, and it has to be from the very get-go. And I wasn't part of the meeting that you all went to with the Bureau. I just read it in the paper, and that they shut down public comment. This is a critical issue for the county, and I think the concerns that Tom voiced about if we do something separate, then we're going to have to absorb some of the environmental impact report or statement, and that road somehow needs to be part, that we want that part of their project. If there is contributing costs on behalf of the county, then let them come back and discuss that. But we don't want to go through, if we do it, then we have to do the environmental assessment separately. That has to be part of the package. So, and I think it needs to be more than a letter said, yeah, we want to participate in Lynn O'Connor's, the contact. And Shirley is correct. She did get direction from this board to contact the Bureau.
Then if I could just get a little clarification, since the Community Development Department will be the lead agency, will then they be writing the response letter to the August 1st letter from the Bureau of Reclamation?
That's fine with me.
Stephanie? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Moving along to item number 10. Discussion and possible action regarding the formation of Calaveras County Reentry Planning Team, continued from the meeting of August 28, 2007.
That item I think we need to just pull from the agenda. I've had some conversations with the state CDCR and with some of the issues going on with the Ninth Circuit Court right now. There are a number of issues up in the air, so to move forward with the reentry team is probably premature. We'll know better in about another 30 days on some of those issues. So I think we just need to pull that from the agenda, and we'll bring it back as a separate item.
Well, Mr. Mitchell, you and the sheriff have already been working with Sam Joaquin.
And we'll continue to work. This is establishing a reentry team that would be working with the state and developing some of the criteria for that reentry facility. It's just premature at this point.
The issue that we discussed last meeting stands with the cooperative.
The cooperative agreement stands. This was an attempt to create a local reentry team with our district attorney, our health agency director, the sheriff, and our office, and to start working on some of those issues with the reentry facility. There really is nothing to discuss at this point because we're now waiting for the state to furnish some additional information for us, and the state is in a quandary right now with some of the issues they're dealing with the Ninth Circuit Court. So we'll have further clarification in probably 30 days.
Okay, thank you. Moving along to item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding adoption of a resolution approving the forms of and authorizing the execution and delivery of a ground lease, a facility lease, a trust agreement, a certificate purchase agreement, and a continuing disclosure certificate approving and authorizing the distribution of an official statement, authorizing the sale of certificates of participation, and authorizing certain additional actions. Mr. Mitchell.
This is a follow-up to the presentation we made to the board several weeks ago. Jonathan is here from Government Financial Strategies to answer any questions that you might have. We do have a revised resolution for you that we have worked out with County Council, with our bond counsel. It's I couldn't, perhaps either Jonathan and Shirley could tell us what's different than the original one. There are a lot of technical issues that we're dealing with right now. These certificates of participation are part of the overall plan, and I believe the last time we were talking about it, we were talking about approximately $6.9 million worth of financing. This financing is critical for us to move forward with projects such as the Cosgrove Creek Local Share Match, Government Center Master Plan, Government Center land acquisition, and also some work on the Animal Services facility, as well as some upgrades to the data center. So I think that's a pretty complete package. We do have one additional separate item that we will be bringing forward to you as part of this financing, and that's part of, there is an outstanding issue on financing for a water tender for West Point Fire, and the recommendation has come about. We think we can get a better financing rate, making it part of this package. So all of those things are included, and Jonathan's here to answer any questions that board members have specifically.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Edwards from Government Financial Strategies. So I just have a couple of information items for the board. One of them is following up on something that Mr. Mitchell said, and then I'll just review the change in the resolution. I'll be happy to take any questions on the legal documents or the official statement. First, in order to accommodate more members of the Debt Advisory Committee being able to attend the sale of the certificates of participation, we have rescheduled the sale of the certificates from October 4th to Thursday, October the 11th. So the sale is now pushed back 1 week. As a consequence, the rest of the schedule is pushed back a week, including the closing will now be November 1. I'd certainly like to invite any members of the board that would like to attend the sale at our offices in Sacramento to do so.
I think the board should buy the bonds.
You'd have to sell some cows, Tom.
Is that on the 11th?
Correct. Thursday, October the 11th. And we are expecting at this time that the financing bids would be due by 9:35 a.m. So under those circumstances, we'd probably be looking to folks to arrive a little bit after 9 a.m. to get set up. That time might change slightly depending on market conditions, but that would be the current time. I know that would be an early morning for everybody, but certainly welcome to attend if you would like. So that's a change in the date, and that also means that the deadline for any final comments on the preliminary official statement, the prospectus, if you will, that was part of your board packet, has been pushed back now to October 1. So you basically have until the end of this month. If you do have any questions or comments on that document, as I mentioned earlier, please provide them to me now, if you have them now, or to staff during that time, and they'll forward those to us on the preliminary official statement. Also wanted to just echo Mr. Mitchell's comments in terms of we received a call from the County Administrative Office about the need to finance a water tender, approximately $175,000, with a desire to finance it over 10 years. Our recommendation was that the most cost-effective option was that since we're going out anyway to borrow money, essentially going to the supermarket, we might as well add that financing for the water tender to this borrowing. So our proposal was that we would add to this borrowing $175,000 for the water tender. That amount would specifically be amortized over 10 years, so wouldn't be amortized over 30 years. And the portion of our debt service payments, loan payments, if you will, attributable to this water tender would be made out of a separate fund. I forget what I think it's the Water Enhancement Fee Fund. We would provide the county with a separate payment schedule specifically related to that amount. But we recommended that since we're already doing this, that this would be a more cost-effective option than doing a separate borrowing for that option. And then third, we provided to the county, and I believe this went into your board packet or was provided to you via email, a memorandum that reviewed the details of how the revenue projections for the tobacco revenues were arrived at. Attached to that was a pretty lengthy report about tobacco consumption and the projected declines in tobacco consumption that builds into that model. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions on the legal documents or the resolution. Basically, the changes to the resolution are simply on the second page in Section 2, the authorized signers of the final documents. Essentially, after speaking with Mr. Mitchell, it was deemed a bit safer to expand that list slightly. First of all, to add that any of the signers here could designate someone to sign in their place if necessary, and we also added the auditor controller as an authorized signer of the documents if necessary. So it just gives the county more flexibility. Any one of these people could sign the final documents. It just gives us more flexibility at the time in terms of who's available. So that was the only change.
A couple questions, if I may. And I guess it's probably for Tom. This is all subject to getting state matching funds. Now, we can't go out and sell...
Tom, not this.
Huh?
This is all subject to the
excuse
tobacco.
me, this is the other one. This is not the bond.
This is jail tobacco.
Excuse me. This is the certificate of participations for selling the $7.5 million or whatever it is for the tobacco money. I guess then I would just go to my concerns. Is the idea of sort of starting to add things to this, like water tenders, et cetera. I mean, I don't want to end up being like Congress, where we take something that's critical and then we start adding earmarks to it. Well, I want this and I want that and I want this. Quite frankly, I think the water tender should be paid for out of cash and should not be borrowed for. And that's always been my position, and I've always sort of voted against borrowing for water tenders. They're very, we get tied into a 10-year repayment. We end up with a real estate market like today, and all of a sudden the payments go off. We already have a significant, I think, debt payment for earlier water tender purchases. I don't know if they're all paid off or how much remains, but I am not for adding water tenders to the certificate of participation.
In reference to the water tenders, the water tender was approved at proposed budget as a capital asset lease purchase. We currently, the first 5 water tenders have been paid off in full. There is no payments remaining on those. There are 2 remaining water tenders that have 5 years left to go that are paid out of the Water Enhancement Fund. In the Water Enhancement Fund at the moment is approximately $150,000.
And how much is still owed then on those 2 tenders?
And the payment is, I would say, it's 5 years worth of payments, and I believe the payment's around $45,000. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and double check that. Yes. When the board approved the water tender for financing for the water tenders, we researched both with the company that was providing the water tender to find out what type of financing they had. We went to the 2 prior lenders that we had for both the 5 water tenders, and the two, and were unsuccessful in getting any proposals from them. So I contacted Jonathan and asked them what government financial strategies recommendation were, and this is the recommendation that they had. This is the only addition that will go on to the COP, and it will be funded out of the Water Enhancement Fund as opposed to, and I'm really not sure, Supervisor Tryon, what the amount of the payments are each year. I would have to go look.
The other, to follow up on Tom's, what kind of revenue are we now receiving from that?
Yeah, that's my next question. What's happened in the real estate?
And so that would be an impact. And two, we have been talking about changing that as other options, the Water Enhancement Fund. We've played with that over the years. So assuming, let's say we make a change, or we do not receive the revenues to pay the 10 years down on the water tender plus the other 2, then that has to be repaid from fill in the blank.
General fund.
General fund.
But that's true. I mean, even if you, because the asset has been approved for purchase, if you determine to go out and purchase it as opposed to financing it, there is not enough money currently in the Water Enhancement Fund to both make that payment of $175,000 as well as the yearly payments that remain on the current water tenders that are being financed.
So to piggyback on that, I'm sorry, Tom.
Go ahead.
Let's assume we're going to do this because economically it seems the right thing to do today. Jonathan, does that add additional costs to the county for bond counsel, your service, or it's because such a small amount it just rolls in? I mean, what are those hidden costs? Thank you.
Right. Very good question. There would be a little bit of incremental cost because there are a couple of components of the financing that are percentages of the borrowing amount. That's not our time, that's not bond counsel. The two that come to mind are, you may recall we discussed the concept of underwriting discount, which is like points on a mortgage, which will probably be less than 1%, and the bond insurance, that is a percentage. But those will probably add a few $1,000s total. And if you were to do a standalone lease purchase, by the time you did everything, we were factoring in that you'd pay more than that. Also, the interest rate on a standalone lease purchase would be higher than for the equivalent of putting it into this borrowing. So we're not recommending that you do in fact finance it. It's just that if you did want to finance it, this I think would be the most cost-effective way to do it.
But we've always done lease purchase time with all the water tenders.
No, but I've always been opposed to, so I'm not real keen on.
If I might be permitted to weigh in just one additional fact to this consideration, there are 5 water tenders that were originally planned, 4 of which have already been purchased. This is the last. This is the last district in the most fire hazardous area of Calaveras County, and the water tender that they use right now is 1947 vintage, and it really isn't considered to be a viable firefighting piece of equipment. So since everybody else has theirs, I'm hoping, and since this other method of financing is not available to us at the moment, I would hope people would give some consideration to this.
I don't think the question is getting one, Steve. I think the question is, what's the best way to finance?
I think you could do at least. I should tell you, in District 2, the question is getting one. This has been on the docket now for 2 years, and we've been trying to get by with what we have, but that's no longer viable here. And the time is very important. It's as important, in my view, as the method, as long as we're not taking financial risks to accomplish this. I also agree with Tom that finding a new mechanism after we complete this cycle would be advisable.
A new mechanism for
figuring out how to adequately put equipment into the hands of people who are trying to protect us from fire and to respond to medical.
You mean in the future, not for this particular incident?
Yeah, this is a cycle this is the last piece of that cycle, and I'm hoping we can complete it and not just fall short of the mark for one district.
If this bond sale is supposed to take place in November, is that fast enough to get the water tender to you? Or?
I'm not sure that we have any other options at this point, since the ones that we were pursuing don't seem to be available.
The board has approved through the budget process preliminary the purchase of the fixed asset. We need to make commitments to the vendors so we can get that process started. I think it probably has a 45 to 60-day delivery. It's critical that we make that commitment and move forward. The whole issue of the water tenders itself will be a long-range issue for the board to take a look at. The original program did not envision a water tender for either Copperopolis Fire or West Point. Those issues came up over the last few years. Your board did make a financial contribution directly out of the fund to Copperopolis Fire. I think it was $150,000. We have been working on this other issue for West Point Fire, trying to find them a water tender that meets their needs, that can be delivered in a satisfactory amount of time. To me, it's no different than adopting the budget. The budget is good the day you adopt the budget, and then after you adopt the budget, things change. And so I think that it's prudent to move forward with getting this with a commitment that long-range staff is going to have to take a look at not only these water tenders, but the Water Enhancement Fund. Our office was working with Ray Waller before his departure. We were having discussions with County Council about what to do with the Water Enhancement Fund. And it's a big issue, but it doesn't mean that we neglect the fiduciary responsibilities or the health and safety issues. Everything is in place to purchase this tender. We've formally bid it several times. We have financing in order. It's just simply we're looking for the board's approval to tag on to this other offering that we're making as a way of providing some cost-effective financing.
Any other comments or questions about this particular issue?
Well, I'm just not sure that I understand. This is providing a mechanism to reimburse, Mr. Mitchell, are you saying that since we did approve in preliminary sessions the purchase of the water tender?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, that money, would it require cash to do that? I mean, would we buy maybe Shirley can answer this, but water tenders, as I understand it, cost $250,000. We've got $190,000 in the water or the fire enhancement fund. So
the way it's budgeted is that you approve the purchase of the capital asset at a proposed budget of $175,000. What you also approved in the budget itself was the first year's payment on that lease purchase, and it was estimated at that. What we now have to do is either, if the board wants to pay outright for this, allocate the funding through the general fund or whatever other source that you want to do to purchase it outright, or enter into a lease purchase agreement. And the most expeditious and cost-effective is to tack that onto the COPs. And what that does was they'll then issue the payment of $175,000 to the manufacturer who is building the water tender, and then we make the payments over the next 10 years. We can't issue that. They want a PEO in order to start building this water tender, and we cannot issue that PO until we know the financing is in place. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, but just so I get it clear in my mind, when you say that they will issue the $175,000 check, capital strategies?
From the proceeds of the COPs. As part of the COPs, you'll have the one section that will be for capital projects that will be reimbursed through tobacco settlement. You'll have another smaller portion that will be amortized over 10 years that will be with a separate payment, and that will be funded from monies collected and deposited into the Water Enhancement Fund as the prior water tenders were done.
I'm sorry, let me just clarify. The way that we won't be issuing any monies. But the way this will work is that every year, if we issue these COPs, certificates of participation, every year the county will get an invoice from the trustee for the entire COP payment. The trustee doesn't care what portion is which. I was just mentioning that for the county's efficiency, we will give the county an analysis that just shows what portion of the payments is attributable to the water tender.
Okay.
So that can be budgeted properly.
And what was the date that you're anticipating this bond sale to take place?
We are planning to sell the certificates of participation on October the 11th.
Oh.
And close the financing, which means that's when we would have the money, on November the 1st.
Okay. So we're at the 1st of September. Are there any other, and just hypothetically, are there any other financing options that could proceed faster than that?
I think I know that the county administrator's office had contacted a number of the lease purchase lenders that the county has previously worked with on this type of equipment and was not able to obtain financing. However, there are dozens of other lease purchase lenders that we're aware of, and if that's something the county had wanted to do, a standard lease purchase, we certainly could have assisted the county with that. In my experience, it normally takes about a month or so to get the financing in place before it closes. It's not an overnight thing. So possibly it could be a few weeks, maybe a week or two quicker if we went with a standard lease purchase approach, but it wouldn't be as cost effective as this.
Or we could take it out of the general fund.
There's an idea.
And additionally, as long as the board has given approval for that financing, we can go ahead and issue that purchase order, and that would make the manufacturer vendor happy.
We've just spent $170,000 talking about it. I move that we just include it.
Okay. Russell, you can support the
Yes.
recommendation, Rita? Steve? Tom?
I have a comment. I am not in favor of this. I don't think we should be borrowing, frankly, to buy water tenders. That's been my position ever since the board made the decision to borrow to buy water tenders. The repayment source is based on housing in basically non-public water areas where they have to drill wells. Having a housing as a repayment source today, I think we need some further analysis of what's happening there. We already have 2 water tenders and 5-year of payment on both of those. In front of us, I'm not sure we're very secure on our repayment source. At least there's no analysis as to what's happening or may happen with housing on wells, number one. Number two, we are going through a general plan update process. I know for myself, I think one of the critical elements of that general plan process is to see if we can get more housing located on public water and public sewer and roads built to appropriate county standards and less of what I would refer to as rural sprawl. And I think that also has the potential to have some effect on housing with wells. We're already getting inundated with letters about people having to having well problems, and we haven't even really had we've had light rain years. We haven't had anywhere near drought rain years, and if we end up in drought rain years, that will have I think a very significant effect on housing, particularly on wells and the availability of water. So I am not in favor of this. I'm kind of disappointed it has come. We've had lots of discussions on the COP, and this is the first we've heard of a water tender being added to it. As I stated earlier, it strikes me as more of an earmark than keeping the certificate of participation true to its intention, which is basically to capitalize the revenue stream to come from estimated tobacco revenue. So I will not be in favor of the motion.
I agree with Tom in that this is based on wells and more than 900 feet. And the worst-case scenario is the general fund will take a hit every year for 10 years, which would be $17,500, right, if you take 107, yeah. So if the board enters into this understanding that we have 2 water tenders to pay off, and we're going to have a 10-year lease payment, as we have done for sheriff's vehicles, then what we're looking at is a general fund hit of just under $20,000 every year for the next 10 years. So I don't think we're going to be talking about that much significant. That's, if I understood Jonathan to say, it might be a few $1,000s for underwriting and bond insurance. So
correct. The issue is
really,
simply...
that's what we're talking about, because, Tom, we don't have the money in the general fund to buy a water tender now. And if we saved and paid for it, which is why we have done all the others on lease purchase, and assuming the water enhancement fund goes away, worst case scenario is a $20,000 general fund hit, or a commitment by this board. And if we vote that way and we understand that it could revert to the general fund, then that's how I'm voting.
Okay,
so you want to take that out of any potential compensation increases for employees? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what you're saying. Just out of your paycheck, maybe.
This is
I'm sure before you could prove that, that's what would happen.
This increases the bond level, the offering, by 0.2%. So, 0.025.
I'll be in support of this proposal myself. The issue for me is, of course, the financing is important, and Supervisor Tryon's comments have merit, but the overriding concern here, and the most important thing is that we have an extremely vulnerable area of the county in an extremely dry or vulnerable situation this year as far as our weather conditions. Is that the cost to the residents in the West Point general area, should we have a major fire and not have the equipment to fight that fire, far outweighs the decision on how to finance this. And I think they've brought before us the most expedient way to finance this, and the priority here is to get this water tender in place as soon as possible. So for me, that's priority is more than the method of which we purchase or finance this. So I will be supporting the recommendation of government financial strategy.
Well, we could finance it out of the general fund.
But this is the recommendation of our consultants, so I support that.
And that makes it even faster, because that'll be done this week.
Supervisor Claudino, if we could have in the motion, we've talked all about the current situation, but we just need a recognition as part of that motion that we also include financing for the water tender. That needs to be included.
Tom, I guess I'd like to keep it separate, because we know Tom's not going to vote for that.
Okay.
And I am interested in Supervisor Tryon's vote on the rest of this. And so if we could vote on this or not, as the board chooses, and then...
That's a very good comment, because when the people that rate the bonds and look at what we're doing, I think it's important to understand the board's position. And
okay. Are there other issues, concerns, or questions with regard to the resolution?
I have a question. I just wondered, Jonathan, when the final draft documents will be available to be reviewed.
The final documents won't be finalised until after the sale. So the documents that we have now, I guess they're continuing to be worked on, and will continue to. My understanding, if we have provided them to your office, I certainly.
Right. Which is why I said final draft. The documents that we have are far from complete.
Okay. We'll continue to distribute the continuing evolution of those documents to your office. They won't be 100%, I guess, completed until after the sale. But certainly your office will get a copy of the preliminary official statement before it is sent, the version that will be sent before it's sent, and of those documents too before the sale.
Thanks.
Since you last talked to us, are there any discernible trends in relation to the cost of financing and interest rates? And what are the implications of that week delay in relation to that?
Well, it looks like interest rates have eased back a little bit. So I think the numbers that we talked about last time would still be good from a conservative standpoint. I wouldn't provide any updated cash for you, but cash numbers, but interest rates have backed off a little bit. So that's good. That gives a little bit of leeway between time when we sell and the numbers that I gave you, which were conservative. So keep our fingers crossed the interest rates don't go up too much higher.
Bill, I might add that two critical things here. Once the proceeds are determined, the administrative office will come back to your board with the specific list that you've seen before to actually appropriate those funds with the corresponding sources of revenue. So that remains to be done. And also included in the certificates of participation is approximately $3 million for land purchases. So it's extremely critical. As soon as these proceeds are received, that's the earliest we can move forward with any land purchases that we've discussed for the government center.
Okay. Any other discussion regards the resolution exclusive of the water tender issue? Is there a motion?
I'll bite the bullet.
I think I have a motion from Supervisor Callaway.
A resolution approving the forms and authorizing the execution.
I second that motion.
And a second by Supervisor Walensky. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0. Back to the water tender.
I would just give one comment, Mr. Chair, that this also is backed up by the general fund, and if the tobacco revenues do not come in as anticipated, the general fund has the obligation for repayment.
Right.
So when you guys go to church next, pray that smoking doesn't decline.
Thank you, Supervisor Tryon.
Thank you.
I'm actually
Pastor
more
Tryon.
inclined to hope that the conservative estimate that was provided us in terms of the downswing in smoking turns out to be true.
Thank you for that information, though. It was very detailed. I really appreciated it.
So, Mr. Mitchell, what do we need to do to
I'd like
finalize
to-
the...
We'll turn to Supervisor Callaway.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we include the 175, Shirley, plus or minus, that we include up to a maximum of 180,000 to be added on to the sale of the bonds for the specific purpose of purchasing a water tender, the repayment to be from the Water Enhancement Fund.
And the duration is 10 years?
Yeah,
Term.
that's the lease term.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the proposal to lease purchase the water truck be accepted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Carries on a 4-1.
Gee, it's always interesting when a supervisor votes different. Their voices get deeper and louder.
Calm down.
Do you notice that, Alice, over there?
That's a very good impression. Okay, we're going to move along now to item number 12, the review of correspondence, reports, and various matters of concern, board members and staff. We'll start with Supervisor Tryon, please.
Well, one thing of good news is I took my son Walter and we went down to the Cal-Tennessee football game, and the right team won. So
Heck of a game.
it was a heck of a game.
I thought Cal won.
I
thought Cal won.
That's the right team. It was a heck of a game, and it looked like we were giving it away in the third quarter, and then came back in the fourth quarter and sort of took control of the game. So anyway, we had a good time. I wanted to bring up to the board, and I think this is probably in Bill's district, but it would seem to me it would be appropriate to have a closed session on the Trinitas project and get a history of it. I think there is potential for litigation there. I think there's got to be potential for litigation there. I would, for one anyway, would like to have a little more knowledge and a little more history and kind of where this thing is going and what our exposure is and the like. So
I'll see you on the 11th.
I would like to have either, if we can't have a closed session, I think we should have a study session, but I think this thing is so wrought with potentials for litigation from either side and all parties that I think we should have a session on
I
it.
could not agree with you more. My question is, Mr. Jones, is this qualified for?
I have to confess that I was not listening to the board for the last minute while I was talking to Jonathan, so...
My suggestion was that maybe we should agendize a closed session under potential litigation on the Trinitas project.
Oh, yes, of course.
And maybe we could get some history, how we managed to get here, what the issues are. I mean, I think there's so much opposition to it, at least on my email, and I think the developer and the like. So I think whatever happens out of this, there's probably a significant potential for litigation, and it would be nice to know what our exposure is, how we managed to get here, of what discretion is available to the board on the project, et cetera. So I think we should have some kind of thoroughgoing analysis of that project.
The board can make a finding that there is significant exposure, and based on that, you can agendize it. So,
well, I think there is, so I'm willing to make that finding.
I agree. Is there any disagreement?
I agree with that.
Okay, so Mr. Jones or Mr. Mitchell.
I'll work with Jim Jones.
Thank you very much.
Just one observation about that.
Anything else?
No, that's it. That's it.
I'm in agreement that we ought to get together and talk about that, but its agenda is, as I understand, the first hearing is September the 20th on the Planning Commission, so doesn't matter?
In fact, does.
Okay.
Well, can we get it on maybe for next week or prior to the hearing?
The week after, Tom, is the 18th, so we'll still have time before the Planning Commission.
Right.
Oh, before the Planning Commission doesn't.
That
we're not
doesn't
going to affect
matter.
the Planning Commission
No.
by our closed session anyway. So.
No.
Steve?
Yes. Today I have the Mental Health Advisory Board meeting at the library at 4 p.m. I have on Friday 2 meetings that are concurrent. Need to get to both of them, though. We have the family support meeting at 9. It's a special meeting over at CalWorks, and then the First 5 Commission meets at 9:30 on the same day. I'll also be attending the Saturday meeting of the Mountain Miwok Tribal Council.
We meet at 9:30, family support.
Family support is 9:30. Great. Well, so I got 2 meetings at 9:30, and you
Who's your
need to be at
alternate?
both of those.
Steve, who's your alternate?
On family support, I'm not sure.
I think it would be, I'm not sure either. I think it's Russ, but I'm not sure. We'll check with the clerk.
Because those are negotiations.
Right, I know, so that's critical, but I also, I believe a quorum is at stake on the other. So
Maybe you can get your alternate to go to the First 5.
First 5. That is you, actually.
And the date of that meeting again?
That is Friday at the 7th at 9:30 at the First 5 office in San Andreas on Main Street, right across from the newspaper. And then also I will be leaving the county briefly the week of September 17th. There's a National Forest Foundation gathering, and I'll be representing the CHIPS project at that, and I therefore will miss the Tuesday, the 18th, September 18th meeting.
You are going to miss the Board of Equalization.
I planned it that way, actually.
Yes.
I wish you all luck in your deliberations.
Yeah, thanks for nothing. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Rita?
Well, the log-in jamboree went well for me on Saturday. How was it Sunday, Rev?
It was really fun. Next year I'm going to throw an axe.
Oh, good. I've done that. That's very fun.
It would have been too dangerous this year. So.
Good practice.
I have potential jury duty this week, so I won't know till tonight if I'm at budget on Wednesday or Thursday. And family support, I will be at family support on Friday, and wagon walk is on Saturday.
What's on Saturday?
The wagon walk, the fundraiser for the Humane Society. And
Oh, I thought you said wagon walk.
I said wagon.
Wagon and walk.
wag.
Got it. Don't even, yeah.
Wag and walk. Got it.
It's a good visual.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, it's true that what Marita said about the Jamboree, I attended that and participated to a limited extent in that thing on Sunday. It was fun. Now coming up this week, I know that this is kind of overly redundant, but I ordinarily have my office hours on the first and third Thursdays. We have budget sessions this week that's going to make it impossible for me to go to my office hours both at the Ginnyland Firehouse and the Copperopolis Firehouse on this Thursday. I would encourage anybody who has a need to talk to me. You could call on my cell phone at 480-8968 or email me at rthos2020@caltel, and I'll make other arrangements to meet with you. That will be this week on Thursday. I will not be available, but I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you.
I should also mention that my Thursday office hours will also need to be canceled.
I'll mention my Friday office hours. I won't be there either.
On my Wednesday. All right. I have nothing to report. Just a reminder, we do have budget hearings tomorrow and Thursday. Mr. Mitchell, that is in this room? Or where?
Both days, I believe, are in the Sequoia.
In the Sequoia room?
Sequoia room, CalWorks.
It's CalWorks. And at what time do we start?
9 o'clock in the morning, both days. 9. And then we would encourage you, any questions you have prior to tomorrow, please call Shirley Ryan or myself or email us. Our goal would be to get done Thursday as expeditiously as possible. There's not much money to allocate, so we'll be moving fairly quickly. So we'd like to suggest that we could be done early on Thursday. It just depends on how long everybody wants to talk about not having any money.
So is that the good news or the bad news?
The bad news is the good news.
Okay. Thank you. Rita, you had something else?
One, I did call Mr. Mitchell last night about 8:30 or 9 at night to ask him a question on the budget. But also, Tom, I do want to congratulate you on your appointment as CAO in Mendocino County.
Well, thank you. I just received an email earlier this morning, and it tells me that Trinity County is now looking for a CAO, and as is Siskiyou County.
So it's Butte, Siskiyou, Trinity, and Alpine?
And Calaveras.
And Calaveras.
Yeah, all will be looking for CAOs at the same time. So,
well, congratulations,
thank
Tom.
you.
Are you going to re-register?
You all have to go there? You all have to go there?
But you already did.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
I'll register as a libertarian.
Oh, my God, it's spreading out.
All right, Thomas.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell, do you have anything to report?
I just wanted to give you a little handout. We have been working our office. It's one of those few spare time fun projects that we actually get to do. Our archivist has been working with Julia Costello. We've been trying to get to the bottom for a number of years, so to speak, of the Pauper Cemetery. So here's some work that was done by our GIS staff and what we think potentially is where the bodies are buried. The Clampers have been working on, they will be providing a monument for us talking about the history of the Pauper Cemetery, which are those people that died as paupers in the old county hospital. The they've already started work on the monument. There will be a dedication on September 15th, which we'll be giving you all invitations for. I won't be in town myself, but the monument should be complete. It'll be a bronze monument enclosed in rock, detailing those who were in this pauper cemetery. It's been a fun project for everybody that's been involved, and one of the surprising things for me as we did the project was I did not realize there were as many Chileans that had come to work in the gold fields as originally I'd always thought. I knew the Chinese were here and Hispanics were here, but there's a large population of Chileans, and some of them died as paupers, and they're at the cemetery. We do only have one headstone. That's because they did die as paupers. There are not normal headstones that you'd see in a cemetery. So this is the current state of research of where we
What's the date
think
for the
bodies-
dedication?
September 15th. And the clampers will be doing their actual formal dedication that day. So it's been a fun project. It's important from an EIR standpoint because of some work we're doing in the government center, but more importantly, it's somebody's relative that's buried there that we think it's important for them to be able to find that relative. So we'll continue in our spare time on that project, but I thought you'd like to know that staff has done a great job with something that's really important, I think, to a lot of families out there.
Thank you very much.
As a follow-up to that, we had scheduled a tentative meeting with the various cemetery districts, but weren't able to pull it off. Do we have another date?
Yeah, Mike Miller and I are working on a date for that. Yes, thank you for a reminder.
Mr. Jones? Nothing. Carol? Okay, we're going to, this meeting will be adjourned. We're going to have a study session immediately following the meeting. Anna?
Because I watch you every week on Channel 1. Sometimes 2 or 3 times that I watch the program to get to where I left off. But you come through good, you come through clear, and you also very enchanting with whatever project or person is doing. You do a good job, and it comes over to the public. A lot of people don't know this because they can get it on TV. And some of the subjects we just do well. But again, you do a good job, and you're supposed to do a good job. And the board members, as you're speaking, he doesn't flash through the audience. He focuses on you, which is important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Jason's going to be impossible now.
We'll be happy to sign autographs afterwards.
Yes. Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Does anyone need copies of this, the board's principles, budgets, all of those? I'll put them out here.
They were emailed yesterday. Go ahead.
I have no idea what that is.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready?
Yes, this is normally before we start the budget every year, we have you go through all of these documents. They are included in the final budget. Some of them say 0607, but that's just because they carried over from last year. So these were our goals last year. They're budget principles. So if we just went through each one of those, Bill, if you just want to take us through there, and they want to make any changes to the mission statement or to budget principles, the goals and objectives is probably where the main focus of our discussion needs to be. I think
Do you want to just start at the beginning?
any changes that we need to make to our mission statement?
Okay, we'll just take them one at a time. As far as the mission statement, are there any comments or suggestions for changes from any board member? Seems pretty concise. The mission statement, for those folks listening, is the mission of Calaveras County government is to provide service, infrastructure, leadership, and vision necessary to advance a safe community, maintain a high quality of life while preserving local history and culture, and to protect the personal liberties of all its citizens. Is everybody okay with that, or are there any? Okay. Let's move along to...
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I'll go back. I'd just like to say to protect, because personal usually means civil liberties. I'd like to say personal and economic liberties of all its citizens.
I don't support that.
Oh, is socialism the vogue?
I just think it's way too fuzzy, and we don't have control over all of that. And I mean, it's not
We have
just
control
under
over
our
personal liberties?
under our purview, or we like to think we do, Tom. But I don't think we have as much control. I don't support adding that in. I fought you on the other one,
Well, I would like to see it say
you.
personal and economic liberties of all its citizens. Then maybe you'd pull the board on that.
Okay.
What does that look like, Tom?
Well, it includes property rights.
Oh, and what does that mean? We're going to
Well, what
get
does
rid of
personal
all
liberties
this.
mean to you?
Tom, that was yours. That was not mine. When you wanted, because you were afraid that we were going to start doing eminent domain across the county, and personal liberties was important to you. It's with your philosophy.
And so are economic
I don't have a
liberties.
problem with that one. I will keep that one, and I have said fine.
Okay, Mr. Chair, pull the board.
Well, I'm just saying I want to know what it looks like.
Wait a minute. Wait, don't make me reach for the hammer.
I think we should order lunch.
Okay. First of all, Tom has a suggestion I'd like to pull the board on.
Well, I'm asking for discussion first.
I'm going to do that if you'll allow me. I'm going to start over here. We've been discussing it now for several minutes. Steve.
Well, I too am interested in what that means. I understand individual liberties that are essentially encompassed in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. I have seen that there's been an attempt to equate property rights, which I also see as fundamental, with development rights, which I don't see as inherent body of law. And I would hate to think that we're incorporating that into our budget principles. I also would make one other point, which is that I think it's the budget itself that matters, and that a lengthy abstract debate based on personal philosophies is not necessarily going to get us to where we need to go on this, and I'd rather spend not a lot more time on it.
Marita?
I don't know what he said.
That's okay.
I don't
What are you
know
going
what
to
Tom
say?
said. Whatever Tom wants, I don't support.
Okay, Russ?
Well, I wasn't around when this mission statement was drafted, but I don't see anything wrong with just leaving it the way that it is.
Yeah, I'm fine with the way it is.
Well, economic liberties were just flushed down the toilet.
Okay, does that mean we won't have to talk about it anymore?
What they always were.
Yeah. You're on your own. It's capitalism. Moving on to the County Calaveras budget principles. Well, I'll just put that out there. If there are any, we'll start with, I'll just put it open. Does anybody have any suggestions to change or to modify any of the 10 budget principles that we had from last year? Everybody okay with that? The next item.
I would have one on item 4.
Yes.
Where we say maintain costs by controlling personnel expenditures. I think there's lots of ways to maintain costs, but I don't think we should send a message that our only view of maintaining costs is either not hiring personnel or not providing adequate compensation to be competitive in the marketplace. As far as new positions, obviously we always require justification. I'm not sure I always agree with all the justification, but I'm not so sure we really want to just say that all costs are basically to be controlled by controlling personnel expenditures. I'm not really keen on that.
Okay, so if I hear what you're saying, Tom, the actual principle in the paragraph here is not your argument, but the description or heading that's stating that this is the only way to maintain costs. And for those that don't, perhaps watching or listening, that don't know what that is, let me just read. It's only 4 lines. Over the years, the number 4 is maintain costs by controlling personnel expenditures, and then it is explained by stating, over the years, the board has approved additional positions in county departments based on sufficient justification, and then only when funding has been available. This policy has been effective in controlling expenditure growth, operating within the revenue limitations, and avoiding deficit spending. Grant-funded positions are allowed, depending on circumstances, on grant and long-term funding. So that is the principle number 4. But I'm hearing that how it is.
I don't mind the wording. I don't like the heading.
Right.
If you say personnel expenditures, that includes all compensation.
Okay.
So maybe you can basically just say require justifications for any new personnel positions.
Shorten it down.
Okay, Steve?
I have been speaking to this, I guess, repeatedly for the last year, but I think there are 3 ways we can save money. One is operational expenses, cutting those. Secondly, structural consolidations or ways to change the structure for efficiency. And finally, technological. Those are the 3 ways we can do that. And if we were to cite those 3, then we would first take away the onus that Tom has described, which is that we're just going after the staff or services to balance our budget, and we look at efficiencies in those 3 areas as the best way to do it.
So would you leave the current wording and add that, or replace it?
I would take away, I'd change the title.
Right.
Maintain costs by controlling personnel expenditures, and I'd put maintain or
you could just eliminate the word personnel.
Well,
No,
but I'd like to actually add
expenditures are
operational,
everything.
structural, and technological efficiencies as the basis for accomplishing that.
Okay, but remember, these principles are the things that guide us when we make our budget decisions. Some of the things you're talking about are sort of organizational issues that are done through other, as I see it, venues. Then we're sitting down and redlining the budget.
And I think, I believe the budget is the most central piece of that, and those efficiencies should be brought up as part of the budget process and be ready for our review each time. We often do this on an after-the-fact basis or piecemeal, and I don't see any comprehensive approach to this.
So that means all organizational changes can only be done when we do the budget?
No, but I would say that we need to encourage our departments toward those things as we approach budget. When people ask for more staff, more equipment, more things that would make us more efficient, it's important that we figure out how we're going to cover that, and those savings that can be accomplished by those need to be in place or under consideration as part of that.
So you'd like to make that statement in addition to what's already here?
I was simply going to change the title to that.
Fine.
To say maintain costs or actually and create savings through operational, structural, and technological efficiencies.
Any comments about that?
I just think we're sort of, I mean, the words we don't have a problem with. That's the most critical. And the board's been very strict about adding positions because that's what guides us when we're doing the budget, because every year it's at budget time that the departments come to us with new positions and reclassifications. So I guess my feeling is we need to call it what it is. I philosophically don't disagree with Steve, but this is a tool for us when we're out balancing the budget. I don't see us getting into the organizational issues at budget time. We have a lot of opportunities during the year, plus Steve brings it up at every, and that's not negative, but Steve, that's his mantra every chance that he gets, and that's appropriate, and I think the message is across to the departments. But when we're having to approve new positions that are in our budget book, this does what it says we're going to do. And our largest costs are personnel. So I just think we should, maybe it should be by controlling additional personnel expenditures. And that's it. I understand the message that we don't want to send to staff, but that's going to come in negotiation of pay increases. That's not going to come into as so much as a budget principle that is for us to keep in mind when we make our decisions, and that the staff and the public knows what we keep in mind when we make our budget decisions.
Steve, can you reiterate how you would specifically change in that number 4 title?
Actually, I think maybe the easiest way, rather than to go into, we should talk about this in greater detail. And I certainly, from my point of view, will be looking at each proposal coming in relation to those 3 things. But if we simply crossed out personnel and said maintain costs by controlling expenditures, we could probably shorten this discussion.
Except the expenditures here have to do with positions, not with services and supplies.
That's pretty well covered in the narrative.
But if you take out the word personnel, expenditures are all expenditures, not just personnel expenditures. That's fine.
Well, we should vigorously examine all expenditures.
Oh, absolutely, Tom, and we do. But the reason we put this here is that our biggest expense or cost to the taxpayers of the county are personnel costs.
Shirley, what percentage of the budget is personnel costs? That's 60%? So that's the number you have to work with, personnel costs.
60%, did you say?
So what about saying controlling personnel expenditures and organizational structure?
Is that a compromise? Does that help, Steve?
It's fine.
You're stuck here.
That's
Are you all right with that, Tom? Russ? Anybody?
I don't know. I have a problem with sort of a message that basically says, well, we can control all costs, we'll just never give a compensation increase.
No, Tom, that's not what this says.
Well, when you say personnel expenditures,
this says additional
personnel
positions. It doesn't say salaries. It says read the story. It's additional positions.
Maintain costs by controlling personnel expenditures. So I don't see where you're getting.
The board has approved additional positions. This deals with additional. It doesn't deal with salary increase. Because when you have additional positions, you need additional desks or additional costs.
I think we're mountain climbing over a molehill here. So
okay.
I'm okay with leaving it like it is. Steve?
I actually don't care.
Didn't care. Russ?
If he doesn't care, I don't care.
Marita?
As I modified.
Tom?
I don't like saying just controlling personnel expenditures, because that encompasses much more than the narrative.
What would you say there? Or is Marita's suggestion okay with you?
What about, Tom, personnel and expenditures and related costs? I understand what you're saying. It's the story that's critical. That's the principle. So what do you want to say?
Okay, we've got 3 people that are okay.
Why don't you just say control costs by limiting new positions? That's what you want to say.
All right, I'll throw another one out on the table. I agree with Bill. This is whatever you said, I agree with.
Okay.
It's by controlling expenditures, just cross out personnel. That makes it warm and fuzzy. It doesn't get rid of the reality of what it is we're considering.
Editorial comment.
Yes.
I support that.
All right.
So do I.
Moving right along.
Can I weigh in on this again?
Of course, Russ.
Okay. Just manipulate the words a little bit. Maintain costs through prudent position control.
How about just prudent personnel policies?
Yeah, but its position control is what's talked about here in the narrative below. Maintain costs through prudent position control. And that just segues right into that.
Okay, that's a wrap. I'll vote for that.
Okay, I have maintained costs by controlling expenditures through prudent position control.
Just
Can we...
Through, yeah, that's fine.
Yes, that's
Good.
fine.
That would be good. Going on would be good. Then we get down to, where are we next? Goals and objectives. We have...
Going back to budget principles, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll make another move here that I think there's 2 sides to budgets. One's revenue, one's expenditure. And I think there should be some statement in here, as there is in goal number 2 for 0708 under the goals and objectives. Goal number 2 says support a diverse, prosperous, and sustainable economy. I think that should also be a budget principle, because that deals basically with revenue, and I think we should have something in here, as I thought we should in the mission statement, that basically says, the budget will be construed such as to support a diverse, prosperous, and sustainable economy, that we're not going to...
So you'd like to move goal number 2 to...
Well, I'd like to
principle
leave goal number
11?
2 there, but I would also like to take it and include it in the budget principles.
As in, like...
Which one, Tom?
Number 2 on the goals and objectives. Restated over on the budget principles as number 11.
I don't think we can just totally ignore the economy all the way through the budget process.
That's
our
in number
revenue
1.
source.
Number 1 deals with local economic conditions. Where am I missing it?
Number 1 is foster sound fiscal management. Goal number 1.
On the budget principle?
You're talking about this
No,
one?
we're on the...
Moving
No.
this.
Tom?
I would like to include it over here.
He'd like to
Budget
repeat
principles.
this
Take it off the other and put it
as a goal objective over under the principles.
I don't want to take it off. I'd leave it in both.
You want to
To
repeat?
me, the most critical thing we have to do is to make sure that we have a viable economy.
Okay. You want to take number 2 and add it, not delete it, but add it, duplicate it on the goals.
Yes, and if you support a diverse or the
So
budget,
that would be...
The budget structure shall support a diverse, prosperous, and sustainable
That will
economy.
be budget principle number 11. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's fine.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Are you?
I'm not so sure I wouldn't make it number 1 and move everything back.
I know.
You want to make it number 11? Fine.
I'll make it number 11. We're not prioritizing these. They're just all... Is everybody okay with that or not?
He wants to make
Yes.
goal 2, number 11.
No. Goal 2 for goals and objectives. Number 11 on principles.
No.
But I think it needs to say more than what, the budget will be structured such as to support a diverse, prosperous, and sustainable economy.
Steve?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine. Rita?
No.
Russ?
Yes.
Okay. Got it, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Marita, I won one for the economy.
Okay. Any other comments with regard to the goals or the principles? Okay, now we'll move to the goals and objectives. We have 1 through 10. Are there any comments or?
What do you got 1 through 10?
On 2 pages.
Oh, well, then something's wrong. I thought this was 0607. It says 0607, and now we're doing...
I just fixed that.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, it was
Excuse me. Okay.
typo.
There's a typo.
A typo. Okay, fine. I didn't...
So these are the goals and objectives for fiscal year 0708. As opposed to the principles, these are the objectives. So I'll take a minute and take a look at, I'm sorry.
Okay. Don't we have a code of ethics for everybody in county government?
No.
They don't.
No, there was a draft that more now about 2 years ago that we never adopted it.
Really?
You had a chance to look at it.
I already did.
Okay, do you want to?
Okay. Tom? On the goal 1F, are you referring there to the debt advisory committee
That was the original 10, I believe.
versus budget committee?
That's
I
correct.
mean, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing because we're not going to be talking about a separate committee.
There have been discussions, and that's really a board preference, there have been discussions about having a budget committee, or a working committee, and it works all year round, so you could read that either way.
Well, since we already have a mechanism in place, even though it's called Debt Advisory Committee,
Right.
maybe we could just maybe retitle it. So, but that was one of the things, if there were going to be any high-ticket items or issues that we would always run it through debt advisory, and that's generally been working well.
Yes, yes.
So maybe if it's the title is fine. On number 3D, animal services, review dog complaints, I think that's been done. I mean, that had been the issue before. I would think that could be omitted.
Okay.
Unless there's something we want to put on there. Number 5E, I think we've only done it once, and that was out of Public Works. I think solid waste
We had
got the challenge award. But maybe there's others out there that we're not tapping into.
I think we had two, and we have 2 entries this year.
Oh, this year? Okay, I could be
think one from
mistaken.
Jeannie. We have one from the health agency from Jeannie, and another one from
Oh, okay,
Public Works.
scratch that. I just didn't want to keep putting something in because it sounds nice and it's a goal and we're not doing it. Thank you, Jeannie, for keeping it on the website. Number 6A2, I believe that was done. Updating the zoning code, we're doing that, right, Stephanie? So, but the hunting and fishing clubs, we did that already. That was done.
That's off the table.
But the zoning codes,
The zoning code will be updated as part of the general plan.
right, so that would be in progress.
Get rid of
But the hunting and
clubs.
fishing
We'll leave
is,
that on there for another year.
the hunting and fishing is, should be off the table.
Okay.
Number 7B doesn't have a lot of meaning to me, but number 6A3 does. 6A3, address water supply distribution issues and so forth. I mean, it's the whole thing we're getting into. Number 7B doesn't really have a lot of meat to it. I know what our thought was when we did it last year.
Hasn't that been taken over by the state at this point, that we really don't have
The water issues?
No, the hardwood issues.
Oh, I'm talking about 7B.
7B, water
7B.
issues.
D.
Water issues.
Water
Just says
issues.
Water issues. This right there, just water issues. That's all it says, yeah.
I thought you were
Right.
talking 6B at one point.
No, but I'm more than happy to talk about that. I
Talk
think
about
that,
it, but we're happy to listen.
I'm sure you are. And I think what the goal should be is establish the oak tree ordinance, period.
And it doesn't assign anybody.
We've already
in particular,
done the
but we have an obligation
guidelines.
to do them.
The guidelines are done. We need an ordinance.
You're back up on 6,
Yes.
maybe, or
I
B,
mean,
rather.
Mr. Tryon just gave me a walk-in, so I had to go through the door.
I'm keeping up with you, okay.
Stephanie?
If you could indicate that it's CBA that's going to be doing the ordinance rather than Hardwood Advisory Committee, although we're working in conjunction with them, it's actually going to be the agency ordinance.
I'm not, as far as I'm concerned, but
That's fine with me.
Just establish oak tree ordinance?
Yeah, good.
in fact, just put establish the oak tree ordinance.
There's already a process underway, and let's just.
Well, hasn't the state taken this over? Excuse me, but doesn't state law require a review?
It requires us to have guidelines. We have guidelines, and we now need to put an ordinance together.
Does the state law require that we have an
Yes.
ordinance and not guidelines?
Yes.
We have to have both.
Yes.
One qualifies us for mitigation, the other is the mechanism.
So, but we need to do it.
Why? They cut down all the oak creeks and forest meadows.
No, they didn't.
So why do we need an ordinance?
They did not. 2 of them are on my property.
All the pine trees are gone, that's what they cut down.
That's a sustainable timber yield.
Yeah, what's the sustainable timber yield out of forest meadows?
Tom, give it a rest.
Are we okay with establishing
So what do you want to do with
It'd
7B?
be establishing the
oak
oak,
preservation
the
ordinance?
All
oak
right.
tree ordinance, because we've already done the guidelines.
Okay.
And that becomes in progress instead of ongoing, or what? It is in progress.
Yeah, in progress is fine.
What did you want with 7B, Marita? What was your...
Well, I just felt that doesn't
say anything.
It doesn't say anything.
Right.
Where if you go up to the one before, at least it says we're going to address it, because
Under,
when we go back to the
A3.
issue of wells.
Okay.
I mean,
So you want to
that's more
eliminate 7B?
That's just my thought.
For one reason, it's covered under 6A3.
And we do not provide, as Tom pointed out earlier, we do not provide the water infrastructure or sewer infrastructure. So.
Okay.
Just for a point of clarification, the 6 talks about healthy natural environments, recreational opportunities, yet under that 3, addressing the water supply distribution issues, that seems to be much more in the area of infrastructure.
Well, that's a good point.
So can we just simply take it out of discussion at goal 6 and put it down in 7, just insert that other wording under B?
That's good. Good. That was very good. Do you have that, Mr. Mitchell? Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay. Good call. Good call. Well, number 7E, we've been talking about that one for a few years. The board hasn't done anything about it. So if we're not going to do anything, then let's agree that we're not going to do anything.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
Number 7E. Tom, what you're saying is we need to have our come to judgment moment in this budget year.
Well, I do believe both COG and Public Works are working on the additional funding issue for the RIN fee program. So I'd like to say that, suggest that that's something that's still outstanding. I was more concerned about 7A. Public Works in our office had done some work on vehicle consolidation in a centralized facility, and that's going to be a number of years before there's any opportunities to do anything because of cost and lack of funding. So 7A has been on forever, and there's nothing current that we can do to accomplish that.
I guess I understand what you're saying. I kind of like to leave it because I think the board, it gets back to what Steve says, what he says, and organizational structure and consolidating and trying to be utilizing the funds that are available.
It certainly is it's a great goal, but the problem is there's no money to accomplish it, and it takes a lot of personnel revisions, and it takes department heads being willing to contribute their vehicles to a fleet and establish pools. It's a really huge issue, mostly centering around costs. It's that startup cost, like any new business that you're doing.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to keep it, but that's
just a suggestion.
Okay. The plans for the new animal services facility, I thought we already had draft plans in.
We have concepts. We don't really have preliminary plans at this point.
On 8A.
Okay. So you're saying that remains in there ongoing, Tom?
Yeah, that should be ongoing.
All right.
We will probably in the next few weeks give a proposal for some thought for you with the design-build concept, but it's certainly doable.
Okay.
On 9A, I think the reason we had that is no longer relevant. I think Mary Sawicki has sort of taken the lead there, and that has not been the issue that it was a year ago. I'd eliminate that, and I'm not sure if we have some other things. I like the concept because that's what we're supposed to be about.
So do you want to leave goal number 9 without A? Is that what you're saying?
Well, at the moment, I don't, maybe Steve's got something he'd like to add. But I like the goal, I just think the item under it has been completed.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
That was, I think it was put in when we were considering the formation of the public authority, and that has been accomplished.
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to make some sense out of the structure of Goal 8, which says at the onset to provide services to ensure the safety of our citizens. I mean, what jumps out there is the absence of law enforcement, fire protection, flood control. I mean, we have that there, but in the hierarchy of safety of our citizens, where does animal service facilities? How does that become number 1 under that goal?
I haven't a clue.
No, it's not that it's number 1. It's just a number, because our animals. It isn't. These aren't done in priority. It's
well, my point is, if we're talking about safety of our citizens, where is law enforcement, fire, and flood?
that law enforcement is here. It's in the budget principles. And under 7D, it talks about the support infrastructure, et cetera, for the law enforcement or public safety categories. We put, animal services is an issue for the community. How many of us get calls weekly about animal services? And so we need to have plans. A lot of it's been accomplished on a Scotch tape basis, but
in some ways, Russ, this is just goals and objectives for this coming fiscal year. These aren't goals and objectives ongoing. And so, the jail, if you put that in here, I think you could say we've met it. We put the bond on the ballot, and we've applied for matching funds. We've done a certificate of participation to buy property. I mean, there's nothing sort of other than sort of follow through. There's no policy objective for this fiscal year that's open on the jail at this point. But to develop preliminary concepts, I like the term concepts better than plans. We're not going to have a plan you can go out on an RFP on. That's not what we're going to. But that's a facility I think that we need to give some greater focus to and see if there's some grants or foundations that want to fund something like that along with PETA and some of the other groups. And maybe we can move this thing forward. It's not going to be a general fund. The general fund is going to jump out and build a new $1.5 million animal shelter. But we need to move forward on the concepts for it and what's available to fund it and those kinds of concepts. And that's kind of what's on the agenda for this year. The jail, I don't think is really on the agenda at this point. I think we've done everything we can do for a jail. So, but that, we're not in fire services other than we do some dispatch and we still buy water tenders apparently. And that's it. So, we're not going to take over fire districts. So the question is what's our operational agenda goal for the year? And I think developing preliminary concepts for a new animal shelter facility or services facility is probably something we should start to move forward on.
And that's under the category of safety?
Well, I don't know. You can put it under any category you like.
Well,
put it under miscellaneous if you like.
Okay, Steve wanted to weigh in on this, I think.
Yes, I was hoping to add a thing or two on this community safety. I think there are a number of things that sometimes we don't think about, but really do relate to the well-being of our communities. The thing that jumps to my mind is just going back about 2.5 years, we did a lengthy 4-hour study session on meth, Since then, it has increased in its percentage nationally in terms of the numbers of people who commit violent crimes, the amount of people in our jail, the incidence of domestic violence related to meth, child abuse, and other things. If we're looking for a single most hazardous aspect, it is our failure to consider prevention and education, as well as recovery, as central to our community well-being and safety. So I would hope that we'd at least doff our cap to that. We have the probation department, the public health department, mental health, substance abuse, all engaged, and law enforcement engaged in activities around this. And I would think it would be a policy goal that we redouble our efforts in that regard.
Steve, would you think goal number 9 is someplace we could put that meth issues, that provide effective human services to support the health and well-being of our community? Would that be appropriate?
Actually, for me, I see this as the biggest threat to our safety. Okay. And that's maybe just my district or something, I don't know. But in terms of the amount of people who get harmed by this, not just the people using it, but the people who live in communities where it's being used to the frequency and produced the frequency it is, that is the single most hazardous aspect to life in Calaveras County. It also tends to relate to the number of jail cells that you need, the amount of expense in relation to that, the amount that we spend on prosecution and interdiction, which is in the millions of dollars. We spend about $150,000. This is a budget issue on education and prevention. About 1.2 on recovery and return to health. And then the resulting expenses that we have are quite enormous, having failed in those two regards, and places a tremendous burden on law enforcement and our communities, which suffer the consequences both in property, crimes of property, but also crimes against people.
Okay, thank you, Lou. That's excellent.
So what do you want to do?
I'd like to mention it as a priority for us. It's one of the efficiencies I'm talking about that need to be considered, how we allocate.
So under Goal 8, ensure the safety of our citizens, you would have something that would just specifically list drug prevention,
I would say substance abuse in general, because of course alcohol is another big one, but meth is my particular.
So we're going to, when we do the budget, allocate monies to this?
If necessary.
Well, we do through public health, we do through the sheriff's department, we do through probation, we do through all these. I mean, we are funding them.
I mean, so what I'm trying to get at with Steve is we put this down that takes an action on our part to do something, either to, I can see her cash register rise, Jeannie's saying, yeah, give me more money, or the sheriff. I mean, what is it that the board's going to do? I mean, that's how I'm looking at what is it we're going to do besides saying we support it.
Well, I would want to indicate as one of our priorities that we take a look at that and that we listen to our staff in those 5 departments as to what their wishes would be. But I could see substantial savings and an improved approach. Montana has done quite an amazing job in the last little while, and it seems to me instructive as to what rural communities can do if they allocate resources.
State of Montana.
Can you...
So you put that under Goal 8?
Yes.
Any other comments about that?
I could support that.
And Tom?
Well, I'm sort of with Marita in that, if we're just doing an annual objective, then what do we... I mean, most of these things we're spending money on, either we're developing staff time or putting money into. So I guess the question becomes, what do you want done with this if we already, you had comments from the sheriff earlier, said if we get a new jail, then people won't, if we have capacity, they won't choose jail, they'll choose rehabilitation through the courts. So maybe we're doing a new jail, we're moving forward with that. I don't know how we do more. So I'm not quite know what you want staff to do or what additional resources, which we don't have any, you want to dedicate to that objective, other than it's just, a nice thing to have there or something.
Well, I see that, but we have, like under goal number 10, those are not really funded items either, but they are goals and objectives.
Well, let me be...
But that requires staff time. It either requires staff time or it requires additional...
Tom and Marie have a good point, and I'll answer it directly. I think that $150,000 on education and prevention is not getting the job done in this county, and that we need to do something about that by allocating resources appropriately, to, especially with young people, make sure that they don't get into it because they've been adequately warned. We've found jurisdictions across the country, rural and urban, are finding that they actually have statistical results when they allocate a reasonable amount toward that.
Well, we're going to the final budget tomorrow,
yes.
So how much money do you think we should allocate to this, and through which department?
Well, I rely on staff to look, and I've been saying this for a year and a half, to take a look at efficiencies. How can we, it's not always just cutting money. Sometimes you spend a little and you save a lot, and this is in this particular area, it's very clear that if probation and public health, law enforcement, including a jail that's an adequate leverage for this, and education through the various agencies, as well as the recovery process, are all integrated into a combined effort. It saves enormous amounts of money.
But isn't that what's happening now? I mean,
well,
plus you have an educational process in the schools that's independently funded on substance abuse. And,
yes, I don't think it's
getting
working.
Pregnant in high school, or teen pregnancy and marriage, and all this kind of stuff.
Well, I will hope that we have
most of which I know very little about.
Well, you mean teen pregnancy?
Yeah.
All right,
I think we can put it in because I think when the message it goes to the non-general fund departments is that we'd like you to focus.
Yeah, but I don't mind putting it in, but I do with the caveat that don't come back tomorrow and think I'm going to put additional funding in it. I don't know that there's additional funding in it.
No, but you can...
We still have to talk about what we're going to do for employees, both Deputy Sheriff's Association and miscellaneous, and all the other employees that aren't unionized, as to what, where we're going here.
I think what Steve has said is goes along with your comments, Tom, about item number 10. It requires staff time, et cetera. So at least at the outset, I believe Steve has said he would like to dedicate some staff time to researching programs that have been effective and see if they can be applied in our county.
That's part of it. And I do know that there's work being done on that. I also think that it's underfunded for this county, that especially in the education prevention zone, we are not getting the job done.
And so where
and it's not the fault of the people who are trying to get it done.
Where do you think the job's getting done? I mean, we fight this and fight this and fight this. Nobody's for substance abuse.
I would say
where are we being effective anywhere with any policies?
I think the stats out of the state of Montana are probably the best in the country, and their approach is being used as a model in a number of other places. I would suggest that we look closely at that.
Okay. Is that good for you, Marita, or you have...
No, that's fine.
Okay. Anybody else?
Bill, we haven't talked about mosquito abatement or AB 885. Both of those things are huge issues for Environmental Management Agency next year. Your board gave direction at a study session for Brian that brings something about possibly creation of a district. So I don't know if they would fall under, again, this goal number 8, the mosquito abatement district, and establish rules and procedures for AB 885, because I know Brian's talking about doing community meetings.
That's good.
So
good.
I support that.
That's a good one, yeah. That's the mosquito and vector. We have given direction to go forward with phase 1.
Right.
And should that be successful, then we have to evaluate the following phases.
So you want to put both of those under goal number 8 then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't mind that, with the caveat that, if we're going to go out for a tax, I think 7E comes way before vector control. And, if the board's going to prioritize going out for another assessment, and I think if the 30 million passes, all I have to say is good luck on an additional assessment.
Yeah. Okay, any others? Russ, do you have anything specific that we haven't talked about?
Can somebody explain to me what the objective of goal 10B is?
Is to develop, I've been pushing for that for quite some time, as a code of ethics for the Board of Supervisors and department heads. And I think it's nice to have it codified, how we operate as a board. So all board members can contribute to that, staff can contribute to that. We've talked about it over the last couple of years, and I would like us to have a completed date on this as of next budget time.
It's simply something we subscribe to.
And that it's in writing, and that staff knows and the public knows.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to go back to goals number 1 for a second.
Wait, let Russell still.
Yeah. Would it be possible to say that develop a code of ethics/conduct for the Board of Supervisors and department heads?
Well, I don't know how you define conduct. I think it's easier.
Don't make it too hard on Tom, okay? I'm fine with B.
You can have conduct in ethics. We could add that in.
Yeah. Rita, what do you think about kind of your, Russ's suggestion for B?
No, I'd just like to leave it as a code of ethics.
Okay.
That's conduct, you can't control conduct, but ethics
That's becoming painfully obvious. But
okay. Any other comments about that?
Well, I would hope that our code of ethics has conduct outlined in it. I think that we need to be very clear on what kinds of things are outside the bounds of appropriate or even legal, and that should be established in our code of ethics.
Okay. Anything else, Russ?
No.
Okay. Maria's done. Steve?
Well, there is one. There is one thing. Maria has said that there's not. This is not intended to be a prioritized list. But I heard somebody mention a moment ago about possibly an allocation of $1,500,000 or something for an animal control facility, and we'd have ongoing budget considerations, going forward to that end. Well, if design fees are 10% or thereabout of a facility's cost, then we conceivably could come down to a juncture here in the next few days about whether we're going to approve design fees for an animal control facility, or without having Steve's suggestion about the substance abuse on the table as well. Then what do? We say, yeah, let's jump in and spend $150,000 on design fees.
There's no money for either, so I don't think you have to worry about that.
But I'm just bringing the point that I'm trying to make is without these other things on the table, we essentially have no basis upon which that if we had 50 cents to spend, where
well, on animal control, you're going to end up looking at grants and outside general fund sources. I mean, it isn't going to happen within the general fund. It just isn't. Steve's arguments about, that, I don't think you're going to see more money if he wants to meet with the departments and see how they might more effectively spend the money that they're currently allocated. That's fine, but, I don't think you're going to see hundreds of thousands of additional dollars be made available in the next 2 days.
I don't think so either. I'm through.
Okay, Steve?
I'm fine with it as it's been amended.
Okay. Tom, anything further?
I haven't really got a comment, but I haven't really gotten to mine. I have a couple on goal 1. The rest are fine since we've gone through them all and I've commented on them, I guess. The first is item D, develop a 2-year budget process. We've talked about that and we've had it in before, and it's almost impossible. And so you can spend lots of hours and lots of management time, et cetera, on trying to do a 2-year budget, and it's impossible and it's ineffective because we have no control on the revenue side, or so little control. We can control the expenditures, and we can tell you what we think next year's expenditures will be, but we don't control the state budget, we don't control housing, we don't control tourism, we don't control the economy. So, spending a lot of time on a 2-year budget process, in my opinion, is not a wise investment of staff time. I think what we do need is, from the administrative office, is either quarterly or semi-annual sort of updates as to how we're doing on revenues and expenditures. Generally, the expenditures are always under control. The surprises are generally on the revenue side. And I think we need to focus on that, but not try to focus on doing a 2-year budget, because my worry is that the board would make revenue assumptions that turn out to be unrealistic, and now we've got spending tied to them. And I don't want to start tying down spending 2 years into the future when really we don't have a good handle on revenues or any ability to control revenues. So I would just as soon take D out and not say let's take a lot of staff time in the auditor's office and in the administrative office and put it into a 2-year budget that's just going to get maligned in the second year almost every time. And the other one is F, utilizing a budget committee for recommendations to the board on fiscal matters. My feeling is we have a budget committee, and it's called the administrative office, and things go through the administrative office. And I don't know what we gain. And I want to keep a strong central authority in the administrative office on budget processes and recommendation to the board on expenditures. And I'm a little leery of decentralizing that process. We have lots of department heads, and everybody needs more personnel. Everybody needs more line items. Steve wants to give them X hundreds of thousands for all good causes, but there's only so much money, and we have to prioritize. I very much want that prioritizing done in the administrative office with the Board of Supervisors. I want a strong central control authority, and I don't want to see it decentralized, and then it will just get to be, to me, an even more time-consuming and more contentive process than what we currently have. So I would like to see item D and item F, both new items, removed, and to probably strengthen the budget process, if anything, within the administrative office, not to decentralize it into other departments. So those are my 2 comments.
Okay. Any comments regarding Tom's suggestion?
I have 2.
Okay.
I think Tom's right about the 2-year thing. It's not practical, but I think the purpose of that originally, as I recall the discussion, was to try to get us thinking in more long-term things. And we've had a couple of experiences where we didn't think long-term that kind of turned around and bit us. For instance, every 5 years we have to, or 7, was it?
7 years.
Every 7 years we miss. We have an extra payroll to meet. Right, we've already put that, but the issue is that we didn't really think in long-term ways, and that we had to do short-term fixes to accomplish the after-the-fact economic setback.
But the reason is that was never brought to the board until this year either. So.
Well, and I think that's what happens when we only think on year-to-year basis. So the question is, can we encourage long-term thinking in some other way than a 2-year budget, but make sure that we're keeping a good eye out for our future and budget implications that might be important for us to address earlier rather than later. I can think of many other things that sort of fit that mode, but that's kind of the easiest.
But that's different than a 2-year budget process.
Right. So I'm wondering
what you referred to on that. That's really a 7-year accrual process for the extra pay period, and we need to do that, and we need to reserve funds when we know that there's going to be a payment in the future that's based on several years, then we need to accrue those funds over those several years to make the payments. And I think myself and everybody's in agreement on that.
All right. Well, it might be good to reflect that in some kind of way that could be institutionalized. Secondly, regarding the budget committee or what Marita was called, not budget,
Debt advisory.
Debt advisory committee, it seems to me that it doesn't balkanize decision making if we ask for more input from people who are knowledgeable in different areas of budget and have information that might pertain to it. I would like to see the most inclusive process possible to come up with ideas about how to create the three kinds of efficiencies I keep talking about. And I don't see how we can do that by centralizing and limiting input. Rather, we should have a clear line authority in relation to it and solicit from every single person in this county their thoughts about how we can create, again, operational, technological, and structural efficiencies for our work here. I don't see, what I see is a need to create vehicles for feedback from every single person who works in this county and even people who don't work for it. There's a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of things that have been tested and true in other places. We should have a mechanism that's part of our budget process to solicit every possible idea, vet it through a narrower circle of experts, and finally come to the board with recommendations. But at minimum, maintaining this committee seems a good idea, and many of the ideas they came up with and people who were in that committee came up with that we haven't yet even considered could have already saved us money, and we'd be better off today if we'd been more mindful of it.
Well, I agree with you on everything up until the last comment. I'm the board representative on the committee, and I think it has served a worthwhile purpose in terms of the administering of the budget, as Shirley does and Tom does. I think needs to stay tight control. They need to be the ones that tell us if we're getting out of sync, because on a day-to-day basis, they're the ones that are watching it. But I do think the Debt Advisory Committee has served a very valuable purpose, and I'd like to, I don't know why it says new item, Tom. Am I interpreting it differently? But that's just a holdover.
Should have been a holdover.
That should be, it's just ongoing. Right. I'd like to keep the Debt Advisory Committee as its structure, because when it came up time for what we just approved this morning, Debt Advisory played an active role in that. Because you have the financial offices of the county, and then you have the user department. So, Tom, I don't think it was meant as everything would go to the committee. I think it was meant in terms of how it's been used in the past, and I think it's been time well spent. But I don't know. Randy, you're on the committee, Rob's on it. I think it's served a purpose, but I don't know. They might have a different opinion.
Do you think Randy will make a pitch to the Debt Advisory Committee instead of doing a press conference?
Yes, I think he will.
That's a thought.
All right.
Well, it is true. When we don't provide venues for resolution of things, they come out
But
in other
we do
ways.
a budget letter. All staff has input back in on the budget process. Nobody's cut out of the budget process. Nobody.
Okay. All right. Any further comments on that one?
We entertain every department head that wants to speak. At preliminary budget speaks. Final budget they speak. I mean, no one's cut out of the budget process.
I'd like to get back to Tom's on number 1D. I have pushed for years to do multi-year, and it is very difficult.
Multi-year.
On 1D. But I think there's a way we can kind of look at long-term issues and without going into the details and spending a lot of time. So I'd like to keep it on for one more year and take responsibility of working with staff and debt advisory on that, at least for one more year, and then I don't mind removing it if it doesn't work.
Which one is that we're talking about?
Two-year
budget. 2 year.
2-year budget process.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I would just ask that my two be pulled by the board so we can move forward.
Okay. We know where you stand, Tom.
Yes.
How about you, Steve?
I've already spoken on it.
And it was?
It was that...
Leave them both in?
Well, given Marita's request for an additional year with that language, I'm okay with it. But again, I was suggesting that we, instead of calling it a 2-year budget process, that we incorporate long-term planning in our budget process. That said, I'll support Marita's position on that. And as far as the debt advisory, I would want that to continue.
Okay, Marita, you are...
Debt advisory, yes, I think it served a very useful... It's not a new item, it's really ongoing.
Right. And you want
the 2-year budget, since this is budget-driven, Steve wants it to be planning. I don't know that...
That's fine.
I could do that. I'd like to keep it as budget, Steve.
Fine.
I'm supporting you on that.
For at least one more year.
Okay, and Russ?
I like the keeping the debt advisory committee, and also haven't we essentially one thing that comes to mind is this the allocation on the general plan, the contract for the general plan. I mean, we said, okay, well, it's a $1 million thing. We were only going to take this little segment of it this year, so that's essentially budgeting
for that issue. It is, yeah.
That's on the expenditure side, and that's fine. We can plan how to spend money, but we're not very good at planning how to make money or get money.
Well, that might require a multi-year...
So, where do you stand on...
Maybe we should strengthen our economic plank on the platform. Okay?
Right.
So, Russ, where do you stand on D and on F?
I'll leave them like they are.
Okay. All in?
Okay.
I will go along with Marita's 1 year. If something significant doesn't develop, then that'll fall off a year. I think that during the discussion on the certificates of participation, that the Debt Advisory Committee really provided some good information and helped with that guidance. So I'd like to keep that in there. I really would. I agree with Tom, with Supervisor Tryon, that we want to leave this budget task in the hands that it's in. But the Debt Advisory Committee over the year, I think, has provided us with some real helpful information. Perhaps we want to reword this, though, instead of putting the budget committee, you want to reword it to say, we've been talking about the Debt Advisory Committee.
Just leave it at debt advisory.
Instead of the budget committee.
It's not a very positive word, but it kind of cuts to the chase.
Well, it says what it is, that's right. I have two things I'd like to suggest, or at least ask about, and that is under one, goal number 1, item G, the strategy for extra pay period every 7 years. We've talked about this, and I don't know where it's at, if it's been abandoned or...
I thought we gave instructions to do it.
We're in the 2nd year of that program.
So you can take that off. We're doing it.
That's not what I was going to say.
Sorry.
I'm wondering if we can, and if not, why we can't just go to pay periods, so we don't have to plan and budget for the 7 years. Is there a possibility to do that? Other agencies do it. There's never a 7th year, or a 5th year, or a 10th year. They just divide the year up into equal pay periods. Is there?
No, but there's one extra on the 7th year.
But you don't have to do that if you go to equal pay periods, like the state of California.
Change the pay period.
Yeah, they go 12 equal pay periods instead of monthly.
I think it's certainly worth taking a look at with our BITEC committee, but preliminary, when we talked about it once before, it's a meet and confer item because of how our employees are paid.
Yes.
It does create some problems with the BITEC system and how there are some programming costs. It's certainly worth taking a look at, but there are some issues to be dealt with. I think the BITEC committee that's dealing with a number of other issues that you sit on, I'll ask Rebecca to put it on the agenda and we can talk about that.
Okay, I don't know if it can be done or not, but I think there's significant savings there. There's certainly less confusion. You don't have to budget for 7 years of different pay and wage and salary compensations and plan for 7 years ahead.
Yeah,
We have
basically-
employees coming and going and all sorts of things.
I think basically we take a dollar amount and we put it into a designated fund every year. So the board takes a designated amount, and then when the 7th year, when you go to fund that extra pay period, all we do is we move it out of the designated fund and move it into that year's finances.
No, I understand how it works.
So-
I'm just saying if we went to pay periods, we wouldn't have to do any of that.
That's good.
So it would simplify things. The other thing we have discussed is the annual leave program in lieu of having vacation and sick leave, to combine those into annual leave, and I think there's significant savings possible there. So I'd like to see us take a good hard look at that.
And I think next week we're talking with Francine on negotiations, and I think those would be appropriate things to talk to during that session.
I'd like to echo my support for both those issues.
Okay. Anything else? All in? All done? Anything
That was
else, Mr. Mitchell?
very productive. Thank you.
Okay. In that case, this study session is
Has a lot of effect on
over with,
the next 2 days.
and we're going to go into a closed session.